Hello and welcome back to the Challenger series. Happy belated Thanksgiving, everyone. So today we actually have a brand new caster with us. We have Kitingishard here. Kiting, how are you doing today?
Hello, hello. I'm doing good. Excited to see some good TFT gameplay.
Yeah, for sure. So lots going on with the new patch and the PvE changes finally coming through live. How do you feel about the new patch so far?
I've been feeling some mixed feelings, but I'm still excited to see the new comps that people pull out. Seen some things on the ladder, hoping for some new comps to show up.
Yeah, with the Challenger series, we have seen some new comps kind of show up here and there. So it's not always just a generic meta. So we'll see if that how it goes today too. So let's take a look at the players tonight to see what we have in store. So a lot of returning players that we have seen before: Treebeard, Bertasaurus, Kurumx, 1109, Benva, Numano, Spencer, and M35S. So just to point out, 6 of the 8 players have been with us before, Numano and M35S being the newer ones. Kane, do you have anyone here that you have your eye out for?
Well, I would say I'm looking most at either Bert or Kurum. Bert because he's been at the top of the leaderboards for quite some time. I'm excited to see how he does. And Kurum because I've known Kurum for a while and I'm hoping to see him do well.
Yeah, it's going to be really exciting because Kurum and Spencer was in our first Challenger series, and they were very close neck to neck in getting that top spot. And Spencer was the winner of our first Challenger series, so he has been to Qualifier 1. Did not guarantee a spot to Qualifier 2, though, so he's back again to try to claim that spot. And then also do want to point out, Numano over there is a 3 times champion of our Fight Night Rising. So he has been doing extremely well in that type of tournament scene. So I'm curious to see how he would do here. In terms of our format, it is different from your standard Fight Night Risings. We have the new format that players must first achieve 24 points and then win a lobby, or they have to earn 40 points total. And the first place do win $200 and direct qualifications to Face Qualifier 2, which will be on December 18th to 20th by Team Liquid. So really excited on that. The Face Qualifier 1 ended, and Kaini, you actually were top 4 for that, weren't you?
Yeah, I pulled through just barely 2 days in a row, so I'm pretty grateful for that. But yeah.
Yeah, so we'll have to see that who ends up joining kiting into that qualifier too and gets to compete with our own caster in the next tournament. So we'll hop into game 1 very shortly here. But so with the patch right now, I know that there's a lot of talk about Zed. Sure, Zed is really OP in this moment, but do you think that other comp can also excel in this current meta?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I've seen a new comp pop up, which has been played before, but is seeing a lot more game time now. Warlords. I'm seeing different carries in that comp, like Katarina, Xin Zhao, even Vi, which TFT has named a special name. But yeah, I've also seen Dusk do pretty well, and people are just playing random legendary units, different supporting synergies like Adept and Dazzler with good units overall. So yeah, there's definitely other comps that can succeed.
So we have Jinx, the top comp, quite often on the show. So in the past, we kept talking about Ashen Talon, and Ashen Talon pretty much never really won any of the Challenger series. I believe there was only one game that a Talon player ever got first place on. So we'll have to see if Zed is able to dominate that curse, or will our curse prevail and other comps will be able to take the first place victory. But other than that, there was also a lot of PvE changes that went through, or sorry, PvE changes that went through with like the rerolls and stuff like that. So can you expand a little bit more on the new patch?
Yeah, sure. So a lot of people in the past have complained a bit about early game damage not being high enough, about people being able to AFK their way to the infamous 4-1 roll down and then rolling down all their gold and all of a sudden getting a super strong board. So they removed the ability to hit a 4-cost chosen at level 7, which basically pushes back that insane power strike from getting, or power spike from getting a free 2-star 4-cost. So it's definitely just a good thing overall for the game. In general, making sure that you need to feel the strong board at all times rather than just AFKing until halfway through the game is, in my
Yeah, so without that 4-1 roll down now, I'm curious to see and kind of change perspective quite often to see that when players will roll down and get their power spike. So we're hopping to game now with SpencerTFT getting a bow. So we talked about this actually a little bit briefly before the cast, but what are some of the best starter items right now in the meta?
So obviously, if you want to play Zed, you're looking for that bow. Zed requires 3 bows to function at his best. You're looking for RFC and Runons. So I'm assuming that Spencer is starting bow because he's looking to play that comp. I've also seen other Zed players, most notably Asian Gamer 5, who participated in the last Fates qualifier. He starts BF Sword because he prefers getting the early Zeeks for some board power instead.
Yeah, so Bo is definitely a really strong contender, but the issue is just that if you don't hit that Zed, what are you doing with that bow instead? Are you still building that runons? Or are you still building the rapid fire cannon? Or will you pivot to something else using that bow?
You could always build something like Ginsu or Runons and play either Ashe or Warwick or something along those lines, since I believe Ashe is still playable, even though Talon has definitely taken a big hit. But yeah, other than that, bow doesn't actually have many uses in comps like Dusk and Warlords, I'd say. Although you could still make something work with it, I'm sure. There are a lot of early game items you can make with it, but yeah.
Yeah, fair enough. So we see here that he's just picking up some sharpshooters. Sharpshooters is something that we don't really see anymore in the late game, but do you think that is still very strong early to mid games start?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, anything able to hit multiple units in the early game is going to be really strong. And because the units in early game tend to auto attack a lot more than they cast, because fights are longer and units are slightly weaker, having the sharpshooter synergy lets your damage spread out over multiple units, and you get a lot more value out of your auto attacks. So yeah.
Yeah, so right now we have saw in the past that if you get like a really great start and go on that win streak, you're almost guaranteed top 4. Do you still think this is true for this meta, or do you think that things are a little bit different now that we've changed the rerolls and all the chances to hit those chosens?
I would say changing the odds or changing the early game damage actually helps that playstyle out a bit. Keeping your HP high in early game is more important now because you actually take a lot more damage. Or not a lot more, but still somewhat noticeable. I'd also like to point out that Spencer here, he pre-leveled to try and find a better chosen for his 2-1, but unfortunately he hit the Mage Nami, so it didn't pay off in the end.
Is Luden's Nami not a composition that you ever want to try anymore?
After the recent Nami nerfs, I would say it has definitely fallen out of favor. I think the strength of the comp used to be nearly perma CCing pretty much every unit that goes near it. But now with the Nami mana changes, it's pretty much impossible to do that unless you have, I'm guessing, blue buff Shojin and Eludens, which sounds a little too difficult to make. And also because he leveled, it's a lot harder to reroll for Nami.
Yeah, the level here, he did hit the Warlord here, and we mentioned before, Warlord is a decent start. He has to Jarvan the Variety. And Locket, is Locket actually an item that you normally like to slam early as well, or you tend to want to save that rod for something else?
I would say, given his position, slamming Locket is actually pretty good. He's aggressively leveling, which means he's going to be getting more value out of the item, because he'll be hitting level 5 on 2/5. So for 2 extra turns, he's getting 375 extra HP on 2 extra units. Or actually just 1 extra unit. But overall, the Locket Gem saves you a lot of HP early game, which is what most people should be trying to do right now.
Yeah, and then with Spencer here, like once he hit level 5, just because he has a Jarvan and the Katarina bench already, he already has 6 Warlords at stage, what was it, 3-1? Or not even 3-1, sorry, like 2-3. Yeah, he could possibly go for it if he decides to do double level, which probably he'll hold until after Carousel.
Yeah, I don't know if you want to just go straight to level 5 just to put in 6 Warlord. It's you could consider it, but I don't know if it'll actually pay off too much. He'll probably win with this board anyway. It looks pretty strong. Obviously, it depends on how strong other people's boards are, but he's in a great spot to continue playing Warlords if he chooses to.
Yeah, but switching over to Treebeard here is talking about strong. We do have a chosen Jarvan, which in my opinion is one of the strongest chosen in the game so far. But what are your thoughts on his board right now?
Yeah, chosen Jarvan right now is extremely strong after the mana changes. He ults super early on. He got the Warlord chosen, which enables him to go Warlords if he chooses to, but I can see that he already built the Zeeks and is holding onto a Zed, and he actually chose to put in the Zed over the 3 Warlords, which should say a little bit about how strong Zed is currently. He's always been good early game, of course, because he hits backline, and anything that hits backline early game is usually pretty useful. But right now, Zed is definitely a terror on the Rift.
I mean, Zed is certainly very strong, but even in this scenario, I think that is very debatable when you have a chosen Jarvan already that maybe the 3 Warlords could have been better.
Yeah, well, the 3 Warlords would only be buffing up the Jarvan and the Garen 1, and Garen 1 with no Vanguard at that. So I think he's valuing the damage that he can put out onto the enemy backline with Zed over just a small buff to 2 units, one of which isn't really relevant at all.
Got it. So eventually, when would you sell off that chosen Jarvan? Or do you think it's something that would keep him until stage 4?
I think that he would probably try to keep this until stage 4. It's always very awkward selling off a 2-cost chosen. You're losing a bit of money and you'd have to roll for another chosen right away so that you don't take massive amounts of damage while you're waiting for your next strong chosen to come along. I would probably guess that he's going to keep it. That's what I would do from here. But I'd also like to point out that during the carousel, Spencer, who currently needs a bow, I believe, or a lot of people probably need bow for their Zeds, got the bow pinged out and someone actually denied it. Not sure if they really wanted the bow for themselves, but bows are definitely in a very big favor right now.
I feel like if you're in the lower pick or first pick, then you definitely want to just steal the bow in general just to stop anyone else from completing their Zed itemization perfectly from the start.
Yeah, Zed with RFC is very scary, but Zed without RFC is actually not that good. Like, he can't really hit everything all the time. He'll spend a lot of time walking to his next target. So it's definitely a good thing to try and stop that snowball as early on as you can.
So what are the other core items? So it's Squinsus and...
it's not good too. It's RFC and Runons with QSS. So the Runons, with the recent Runons buff, and also because there's no more Spirit Zed comps, ramping up the Zed attack speed early on to make most use of that Ginsu. Ginsu actually has not been doing as well. It's still a buildable item, of course, if you don't get the Runons. But Runons being able to hit 2 targets, making Zed's AoE, like making Zed an AoE champion is very, very strong for him, for sure.
Okay, so you mentioned before that without the rapid fire cannon, there's almost no point in going Zed, or you still think that it's still strong enough of a unit to carry through even without that perfect itemization?
So it definitely gets much weaker, but you could still play it. I've seen people do it without RFC, and it hasn't looked amazing. Most of the times I've seen them bottom 4 in ladder. So in tournament play, I'd expect that if you don't have the RFC, you probably should look for a different comp. Although, obviously, it's not completely up to them all the time, right? If you get that chosen Zed, sometimes you just have to go for it, you know?
Yeah, and then after Numano, they're playing a different comp. So we mentioned a lot of different comps, but we didn't really talk about reroll Moonlights, which I believe Numano had a 3-star, and that was probably due to the buff from the Moonlight, but he is running Moonlight at the time being with Chalice, and it was very strong. So do you still feel like Moonlights is a contender for the other comps right now in the meta?
Yeah, for sure. I've seen Diana reroll do fairly well, especially if she gets her strongest items, which right now I believe are Bramble, Declaw, and Gunblade. But Diana is slightly countered by Zed. That is a small issue that Diana players will have to deal with. And I believe Numano is not actually playing the reroll comp. I think he's playing just playing a chosen Lissandra for HP for now.
Okay, and why is it that Diana is being countered by Zed?
So Zed has range, and oftentimes when he drops aggro with his shade mechanic, Diana ends up just standing still and not moving towards the Zed at all. So Diana will just stand there and get hit by a really fast
the
attack
worst feeling.
Zed. Yeah, she'll walk 1 tile towards the Zed and just stand still and take the massive shade proc and just do that over and over until she dies. She doesn't even get to heal
here.
up.
The counter is that Diana will just move back and forth on tiles. And unable to hit the Zed. So, okay, so right now, he was looking really strong with that Jarvan too, but he is actually on a 2-loss streak, even with the Warlords and Keeper buff.
So right now, Treebeard doesn't actually have a real damage item, so he's lacking a way of killing the enemy. You'll see that a lot of units tend to stay alive for a little bit longer than you feel like maybe they should. Right now, the only thing that can really hit backline is the TF2 and the Jarvan, both of which don't have a finish item, like a strong damage item, for example, Ionic or Sunfire. So a lot of things in the backline are going to be left alive, and they'll be doing damage to his units.
So right now, he did level, and he is rolling down. So obviously, he felt that he was feeling a little weak. And do you normally tend to roll down all the way to 0, or just as long as you feel strong enough?
I would say you just roll until you're strong. You'll notice that he's picking up ninjas right now, even though he doesn't have a single bow. He's probably considering maybe taking the path into ninjas, but it looks like he's going to be running warlords for now. 6 warlords at level 6 is pretty strong, especially with the warlord chosen, giving you an extra unit you can put in for some combat power. And he's choosing to leave Keeper in, which gives his unit some shield. Although I will say his comp still has the same issue as before. It's lacking a bit of damage. His damage right now is a Nidalee 1 and a Jarvan 2. It'll be a little bit hard to kill some units. But he is up against the Yasuo reroller, who is still level 5 and is not as strong as probably the other people in the lobby.
Yeah, and then you did mention, yeah, he has no bow, but he is holding all the ninjas on his bench, and that's a lot of gold. And he's also holding 2 Jarvans too. So is it always a worth investment to hold all the ninjas, even though you don't have those bow stars?
So that's up to personal preference. It depends on what you're looking to play. It looks a little bit like he's really trying to force the ninjas. From his position, I feel like maybe Warlords would have a little bit more success. I mean, he already does have 6 of them. He has a chosen Warlord. He's been stacking the stacks, even though he's lost a couple fights. He's also won some. And now we're looking at Kurum's board, who I believe is just using the Akali as an item holder for now. Doesn't really have a good GA target just yet, but he has a Cultist chosen, which personally is my favorite chosen in the game. I think it just gives way too many stats to your Galio. Overall, it just gives you options for a very strong board. You can hit 6 Cultists without a 4-cost unit, which is also very powerful. He is on a loose streak, however. I haven't seen how his fights have gone, but I can guess that this entire lobby's boards are looking really strong. So even 5 Cultists, which he's at, is not enough to win.
Yeah, looking that he might win this one here, though. And then also one thing is that Cultist is a beloved synergy for starters, even from like the first patch of Set 4, just because of how strong that Gallo could be for your team. So with Kurum's state right now, he's level 6, he has 5 Cultists, probably going to go for the 6 Cultists soon. Cultist is a composition that we saw that was very strong in the last meta, but do you still think that it's good in this current meta, even though obviously comps like Ninja has really started up as being one of the strongest comp?
So I would say right now in this meta, there are 2 ways of actually playing the game. You can choose to play strongest board, or you can wait until 4-1 and roll down for the exact 7 units that you need for ninjas. I think that Cultists are the primary HP saver for early game boards. Like you'll often see the 100 HP player has either some really good combo of Moonlights or Cultists. And getting that early 6 Cultists will save Kurum a lot of HP here. And because he's already kind of low, you can guess that maybe he'll roll a bit at 7 just to strengthen his board. But as it currently is, if he were healthier and he had the 6 Cultists, he wouldn't even roll at all until level 8. So that's why Cultists are generally favored early game for sure. You can see him also jamming aggressive items. I'd say Sunfire is fairly aggressive. Thieves Glove is definitely very, very aggressive, as you're giving up the option of making IE Last Whisper for a carry, RAP Zed, or not Zed, Talon. He's been jamming items. He's looking to play strongest board, and this is the other way of playing the game. The playstyle that I actually personally favor. I think that with the patch, this playstyle is actually stronger.
Yeah, and then with Cultist, you can kind of have the decision of, yes, you can just keep going with Cultist. You can switch to Dusk pretty easily. Or in general, just because, as you mentioned, normally it does save you a lot of HP where you could just pivot to wherever you want. And Kurum is playing really aggressive. With the Thieves Gloves, I feel like that's always a controversial item. Like, obviously in the late game, if you have 2 Glove and you already have your damage items, you just put it on. But in terms of the early game wise, you do give up a lot of things that you could make that are core great items. So I feel like that's always been a debate of whether or not a Diesel Slam early game is good or not.
Yeah, I can see that he's probably looking to play some form of Dusk mixed with Cultist, which has been a popular comp ever since the start of Set 4. It looks like he's going to be selling the least eventually because he's stacking items on her. And obviously you don't really want your items on an Elise too. But as of right now, this 6 Cultist comp is probably one of the strongest in the game. I don't think even 6 Warlords would be able to beat it.
Yeah, I mean, he's on a 2-win streak, and then now he's not pivot, but he upgraded to 6 Cultists now, so really strong right now with the Galio, probably slamming through soon, right here, smack in the middle, bumping 4 of them up, and yeah, Spencer's just probably going to take a decent amount of hit here.
Yeah. What's also good about 6 Cultists is that even if you're weaker than the opponent, you usually don't lose that much HP because the Galio will clean up a lot of the units for you, so it's just a very good HP saver if you're trying to make it to level 8. I am interested to see if Kurum chooses to roll at 7 here or is going to wait until level 8, because he's at a very dangerous HP threshold right now where if he waits and everybody gets very, very strong, he might take so much damage that he's not even able to come back from that. But if he is up against slightly weaker boards, he might be able to pull to level 8, and rolling at 8 now has much, much better odds for hitting 4 costs ever since they nerfed the odds of hitting 4 costs at level 7 down to 10% from 15. Which is a very big drop.
Yeah, so what kind of items is Kurumx looking for? Because the thing is like he's probably gonna pivot over to Dusk with Riven. So he's level 7, as you mentioned, and probably gonna roll down a little bit. We'll have to see, or he's gonna grade out for the level 8 chosen so that he can get the forecast. But I feel like is Bramble still as important on Riven as it was in the last patch?
I would say definitely not. Ever since people have stopped playing Talon, you don't really need the Bramble at all, except to counter maybe an IE Ashe. Bramble is mostly there just to stop crits. It doesn't really stop Ashe from doing damage to her. And in general, Ashe does counter Riven because it's sustained DPS on one unit, which Riven usually doesn't do well into because Riven's shield can't refresh fast enough to keep up with Ashe's DPS.
Yeah, and then hopping over to this fight right now with Benva, who has a Yasuo 3. We haven't seen Duelists in a really long time, and he's winning, it seems like.
Yeah, Yasuo 3 will probably beat 6 Galio, 6 Cultist Galio, because the Galio doesn't actually do enough damage to kill the Yasuo at this point in the game. With 9 Cultists, maybe Kurumx would stand a chance into that. Although if the Yasuo has the Yone for healing, and he also has a Hand of Justice on it, which could also give him healing, it's probably not enough to actually kill the Yasuo. You'd have to burst him down, which is more difficult for a Cultist comp.
Yeah, and Duelist is actually a composition that we haven't talked about at all. So granted, Benva is at 33 HP right now, so he took a decent amount of hit before he hit that Yasuo 3, I assume. So that's the thing. Do you think that in the late game that comp can still continue, or a composition like Kurumx, who is obviously still has a lot more to grow and pivot into, would easily overcome Benva later on?
I think that Duelist can definitely come back from the point he's at. Yasuo 3 right now is a very big threat that most comps can't deal with. And later on, he can still upgrade his comp by finding the Yone, which gives the Yasuo lifesteal, and the Lee Sin, which gets the Duelist buff, and so can use the Duelist buff to proc more kicks on the board. But the dangerous thing about going down in HP like this to find the Yasuo 3 is that if you happen to have 1 or 2 bad RNG fights, which can happen pretty much to anyone, or if someone in the lobby is high rolling very hard and has an insanely strong comp, which Numano might be looking like he has, it's not super strong, but it's definitely not weak by any means. He's 92 HP. In that kind of scenario, you'll end up taking a bunch of random damage, and that might cause you to go from 33 down to 15, and you are left with 1 life at stage 6, which isn't enough to make it to top 4.
Yeah, and I do want to check out Numano real quick. Since you mentioned his board, I believe he's still running 3 Moonlights, and perfect timing here. 3 Moonlights here, and at 92 HP. So here's the thing. You mentioned he might not be committed to it, but it's doing really well in terms of even stage 4, which is the mid game. And yeah. I do think he might still... Well, we'll see. What are your thoughts on this composition?
So Lysandra 3 is just a really amazing unit all around, especially if you get some damage items on it, which he has with the Zeke's Chalice providing an aura buff to his Lux, and I forgot the other unit, but it's still useful overall. He has the double Zeke's actually, which is buffing up his Lysandra's attack speed, and he has the blue buff, which means that this Lysandra ults once every 3 autos, and the 3 autos are coming out very, very quickly. So the Lysandra is outputting a ton of damage. He has a Cultist to buy time. The Galio coming down gives CC, provides an extra body for the enemies to focus on. The ZZ Rot's on the Diana, which gets the double Keeper buff and is taunting the entire enemy backline. And when the Diana dies, after shielding a ton with Keeper and her ability, the ZZ Rot is then taunting everything in the backline to hit it as well. So this Lysandra has a ton of time to just DPS down everything on the enemy board, and that's why his comp is succeeding so well.
But still, even then, though, it is stage 4, and I feel like the general perception of Moonlight is that you have to roll for your 3 stars in order to still stay alive towards the ladder of stage 4 into stage 5. But he hasn't rolled for any additional units besides just your straight 3 Moonlights, not reroll at all, and he's been able to see a lot more health than I expected, and now pivoting into a Dusk comp going forward from here.
Yeah, I think it's interesting that most people seem to think that Moonlight needs to be rerolled. I actually look more at Moonlight as an HP saver. I've seen Sox do this as well, where he'll find a Moonlight Lysandra and just throw random items on her, and then he'll make it all the way to level 850, like 4 or 5, which is kind of where Numano is right now, and he'll sell it off later on and find a better chosen. It's definitely a really strong HP saver, kind of like Cultist as well. You can run Moonlights the same way you do Cultists.
So we say the other best strategy right now is to obviously play your strongest board and then level to 8 and roll for that 4 cost chosen still?
Yeah, so you can roll still at 8 for the 4 cost chosen the same way you used to roll at 7 for it. But now because 8 is closer to 9 than 7 is for most people who know how to add up to 9. It's less there's less value in rolling at 8, because if you can wait a little bit longer and make it to that level 9, you get to roll for the legendary chosen and for like much higher odds of hitting 5 costs, which I think we're gonna see him do here. He has 92 HP. He can bleed out for an extended period of time and still make it to level 9 with a decent chunk of HP left. I think we're gonna see him try to go 9 and roll down for legendary chosens and 5 costs and just flood his board with those.
I mean, being level 8, I mean, the Lilia he already had at level 7, and then one roll at level 8, he actually hit the Azir and the Kayn. So these are all really good for Numano right now, and we see that the Azir putting really good work with CC, Lasagna doing tons of damage to the back with the work in the corner, trying to survive with those items, but I think it might be enough. We'll have to see. Nope, the stun from the Lux came through, and that was a lot closer than I expected. It was just Warwick kind of doing a 1v6 in the corner spot there.
Yeah, Warwick without QSS tends to get dazzled and then lose like the majority of his damage. Without QSS, Warwick is definitely a lot weaker. We could see Numano also holding Warwicks on his bench, probably just to deny other people. I don't personally think he'll try to play an Ashe comp here, or even a Warwick comp, because he doesn't really have items for his Warwick, but it's definitely a good move to deny the units from enemy players when you have the extra money to do so, as Numano definitely does. Right now he's sitting at around, I'd say 70 gold, level 8, if he didn't spend any money on leveling and all his units on his bench. Now this might push him up to like 80 gold-ish. It does look like he'll be pivoting into a Dusk Legendary comp, which is the other endgame comp that I've seen a couple of complaints about on Reddit. In terms of power scaling, people are complaining that legendary units by themselves are too strong. I personally don't really agree with that take, but having a board full of legendaries is definitely one of the best, if not the best, endgame comp that you can have. So
right, and then you probably played early and mid game really well in order to even get to the point where you have enough gold to play all legendaries composition towards the end game.
Yeah, exactly. So it's kind of like a reward for playing your early game very well and getting good units early game. Because it used to be that, especially the case in set 3, where if you had a strong early game, it doesn't really matter as much, because it just depends on if you can hit the exact units you need for your comp at the end. While playing legendaries kind of lets you roll at level 9 and just play whatever happens to show up in your shop, which I think is a pretty cool thing to have.
Yeah, and then we just saw in this fight, the Kayn actually did a lot more work. So Zed, I thought, would have won just because of the fact that he took out Lysandra pretty quickly in the mid game there, but then the Kayn, with no items on it and level 1, actually did a lot of good work on him.
Yeah, so this isn't just any old level 1 Kayn. This is a double Zeke's double Chalice level 1 Kayn.
Ah, fair.
He has an extremely high amount of AP and attack speed on this. The AP on this is actually comparable. The damage is comparable to a Kayn 2 right there, which is why he was able to pull off all those spins and kill everything on the enemy board there. It's pretty cool to see.
Yeah, so you did mention all the chalices and those Zeeks here, just doing a lot of damage. You know, there is like no, like for example, the Kali they're having like rapid fire cannon and the IE doing a lot of damage. But on Numasa, it's just a lot of Zeeks and chalices. But I do think this Kali here is a little bit too strong for the rest, and that is a 3-star Kali as well.
Yeah, so Akali did just receive some buffs. With the nerf of the mana lock going from 1 second to 1.25, what ends up happening is that the Akali's first auto attack doesn't actually generate her any mana, but that was always the case for RFC Akali before the nerf. And now with the recent Akali damage buff, Akali 3 is definitely becoming more relevant, especially since Talon is gone and Talon was a direct counter.
Yeah, and then hopping over to 1109 here, who has a Yone 2 already, and then also the work that we saw before being extremely strong in the backline. Would you say these are really good items for the work here?
So the items aren't amazing for the work. It does look like he was trying to play Zed and didn't manage to find those Zeds. But the recent change on Yone has created a lot of issues surrounding this unit, I'd say, where if you roll down at level 8 and you happen to hit, or not even level 8, even level 7, if you happen to hit a Yone 1, you're often set for the rest of the game because the Yone just tends to carry your entire team comp. It just does a ridiculous amount of damage. And as you can see here, this Yone 2 has just done a ton of work in killing the enemy here.
Yeah, and the thing is that Spencer actually got a really good Zephyr onto that Warwick, but even then the Warwick came out, did a decent amount of damage, but the Yone just took care of the rest from the very start.
Yeah, so this Warwick is actually doing a ton of work in that it's buffing up the attack speed with the recent change on Warwick's ability. It's buffing the attack speed on all the divine units, and that's a lot of passive value that isn't really is kind of hard to see. He's running the 6 divine, so his units are tankier for much longer. They can withstand Zed's auto attacks for a lot longer of a time. And the Warwick has decent items for range damage, which is definitely useful into a Zed, because if you're melee into Zed, what ends up happening is the Zed will drop aggro with his Shade proc, and then the Warwick will start walking away from the Zed and will never turn around for the Zed again. But in this scenario, staying ranged lets him continually DPS, not just the Zed, but other units. So it's definitely helping him out in that matchup.
Yeah, it's definitely interesting to see these two characters. One obviously your front line, super tanky, Yone, and then we actually have Warwick acting as a Ashe or a Jhin in that corner spot there with the RFC. So RFC has made a lot of melee units into really strong corner carries. Well, Zed as well as Assassin with range, and then now we have the Warwick with range as well.
Yeah, it's interesting to see. RFC, the original RFC carry used to be Volibear back in set 1, if anybody remembers those
The good
days.
old times.
Yeah, the good old times. But RFC has always been good at making a melee carry into an actual relevant carry late game, because what ends up happening late game for melee carries is in the time that it takes for the carry to walk towards the enemy has already killed you. And that wasn't really the case with Talon, because you would go untargetable, uninterruptible, and just jump straight to your carry. So it wasn't that big an issue for him. But for example, if you tried to carry Olaf back in that 2, I believe. Holy, my memory is failing me.
Yeah, it was that 2,
but, yeah. But if you tried to carry Olaf in set 2, oftentimes an RFC would actually create a ton of value for your Olaf, because what ends up happening is the Olaf would jump forward with the Berserker passive, but he wouldn't actually be in range to kill the backline until like immediately after the front line has died. So you'd have to rely on the RFC to reach the backline or an Assassin's Bat.
Yeah, and then actually looking at the players right now, 2 players have already been knocked out. So Benva and Kurumx. So Benva, we recall, was playing the duelist comp with the Yasuo 3. Unfortunately, that didn't end up too well. He did bleed out a lot initially. And then Kurumx as well, who was playing Cultist, not too sure what happened late game, unfortunately got taken out as well. So 11-9 versus Bertasaurus here. And the Yone, again, doing a lot of work in the front line. And then from the back, we have the Warwick. So these two still staying alive, and he managed to take out Bertasaurus as well.
Yeah, so a hidden part of power in the Yone in Yone's kit is that he now goes untargetable after casting his ability. So he ults in the back. You can put him in the front line. He'll get focused. He'll charge up mana faster. He'll ult into the back line and start hitting everything. And the enemy units won't even turn around to hit him. So I think that was actually the biggest part of the change, rather than the buffed armor and MR shred from 60% to 90%. I'm also kind of sad to see Kurm go. I'm a big fan of the Cultist comp, of course. But I can say it's very difficult to pivot Cultist into a relevant late game comp if you're not going for the 9 Cultist. And if Kurm was going for the 9 Cultist, maybe he didn't find the Zillion and ended up bleeding out too quickly. And with Benva's death, it shows that even if you hit a very strong board, as Yasuo 3 is a pretty strong unit, if you take a couple bad losses here and there, you might just end up dying. And that's probably what ended up happening to him. Wow.
Oof.
That is a unit right there. Oh my goodness.
I mean, perfect for this composition as well. Already running Hunter, had the Aurelia in, so 3 at depths, and yeah, he has 2 Lockets as well for backline. So what do you think of this position here? Just straight up all your units in the back except for your 2 adept units.
Yeah, this is the usual positioning you see with Yone comps, because you want the enemy to hit your Yone first to charge its mana so it ults faster. And when he ults in, of course, he's untargetable, or he goes untargetable, so he drops aggro there. Elderwood Spat is also really, really good on Yone. It just gives him a ton of stats, gives him AP, gives him armor, MR, makes him tankier, makes him do more damage. It's just great overall. Hunter is able to burn through the Warwick here, because Warwick, even with IE and RFC, is just a poor man's Ashe.
And then we did see the Dazzler from the Ezra actually went off, slowing the, as you mentioned before, slowed the work down a lot. And then Ashe with the extra Hunter's buffs was able to finish them off.
Yeah, Warwick is probably the unit that Dazzler hurts the most out of everything, I'd say. Even compared with Talon and Ashe, because Talon can just kill your unit eventually anyway, right? And then Ashe has the sustained DPS, but Warwick uses his Divine proc, so if he gets dazzled during the Divine duration, it's very rough for him.
Yep, so rolling a little bit down, hitting that Kindred too. I mean, he hit the Yone, which was honestly one of the best things that he could have found. And going as Treebeard, who has the Akali 3 and the Z3, but all the items right now are on the Akali instead.
Yeah, well, Akali 3 used to be a very good carry. Ever since the mana nerfs, I think she's definitely fallen down a tier. It looks like Treebeard is oh, no. Okay, so he's still going to lose the fight because this Yone is unkillable. But Akali definitely did some work there. Although, as you can see, without QSS, it gets CC'd, it gets knocked up by Azir, it gets dazzled, it gets CC'd by Lux, and it's just all over.
We agree with the approach that he took. I mean, granted, he did hit the Akali 3 really early, so in hindsight, like, that was definitely the better play. But would you say that in a normal run, having those items on the set would be better?
Well, ideally, if you had an RFC of Runons and like a QSS on the Z, it would probably be stronger than that Akali. But given the tools he had, I think scraping a third place with an Akali 3 carry because he got it so early on is actually a very good showing from him.
Okay, and then now we have M35S against Numano here.
So I think this is actually a minor positioning issue from the Yone 2. Putting it in front of the set and having it get focused, especially a set with some mana on it, which the Shiv gives him a little bit of starting mana, makes it so that the set ults first. As you can see right there, there is an interaction between set and Yone, where if Yone is mid-ult, the set does not actually pick up the Yone, and Numano ends up losing because of that.
So would you have said the set should have been on the other side with the Aurelia instead?
No, so I think the set actually positioned correctly. I would say that solo frontlining the Yone without the Shen there to take aggro is better. You can pull the Shen back a little bit. All the units hit the Yone immediately. He instantly gets to 50, ults the entire enemy backline, drops aggro, and then they turn around and hit the Shen.
Gotcha.
So for anybody who wants to up their positioning game with Yone, I would recommend, especially with, I call this 3 defensive items, you definitely want him to be solo frontline with the recent changes.
Alright, so we see here, Numano just hit a Ezreal 2 and a Lilia 2, so he's running that legendaries combo as you mentioned, and you predicted too that with how great of a start he had with the Lysandra, he was most likely just aiming for that level 9 and hitting as many legendaries as possible. Treebeard, I believe that he also has the Yone 2. Oh no, he is running the Akali and the Z comp, and then we have M35S here running the Yone 2. So it will be interesting to see. We do have 3 different compositions here.
Yeah, so it depends on if Numano is able to put together a comp with enough legendaries to offset the fact that he lacks an AD carry. As often at the end game, you definitely want one unit that's able to consistently DPS, kind of like this Ashe right here. It's sustained damage that a lot of legendary comps lack, although with the recent Yone change, I guess I would call Yone a little bit more sustained damage than most carries. It looks like
players got taken out. Treebeard went -9 HP, and then I believe Numano went second place with -8 HP. So that was a really close game there. I'm curious to know who Numano lost to, but even then, we have seen the victory of this competition.
So Numano did lose to the other board because Numano just fought, I believe, the ghost of Treebeard, or the ghost of M35. I'm not actually sure on that, but there's a way to keep track of who fights who there, but as we didn't see, we'll never know.
Yeah, so we did see the top 3 comps. We have the Ninja composition, Treebeard going 3rd, and then we have Numano going 2nd here with a legendary composition, and then we got M35S getting 1st place. So what would we say was their playstyle that honestly made M35S win?
It looks like that they had strong early game boards out of the gate. They saved a lot of HP. They were able to make it to level 8 and then level 9, saving pretty much all their HP. They got to roll at higher levels, which overall means they hit more expensive units, which they were able to add. We saw that M35 got the a chosen Adept Yone, which is probably the best chosen in the game right now. Yeah.
Definitely sealed the deal for him. And then we have Kurumx and Benva towards the bottom there. I know these are some of the players that you're rooting for as well, but they still have a lot of chance to come around. And you did mention briefly with Kurum's composition that he was running 6 cultists, and it is a bit hard to pivot to others unless you go towards 9 cultists, but it seems like that could be maybe a 1st or 8th, depending if you hit all 9 cultists or not.
Yeah, with Cultist, it's like you either hit all 9 and you run that and you're stable, or you have to sell off pretty much every single unit except for maybe the Aatrox and the Jhin and build a Riven 2, Cassio 2 from scratch. So if you mess up even a little bit during that transition, you end up taking some extra damage, and that could definitely knock you out a couple places.
Yeah, so we'll have to see if these players kind of convert back to the other meta with trying to do hard force set. So even in this composition, we did see a lot of people run Zed items, but only one player truly went for the Zed, and that was Treebeard. And Treebeard did not have perfect items for Zed, but still was able to go to third place. But it seems like the main focus for him was actually the Akala theory and not the Zed theory.
Yeah, I think given his items, because he had the eye and the blue buff, carrying the Akali there is a perfectly fine decision. You don't have to run the Zed carry every single time. Getting the ninja buff on a unit that uses ninjas with some supportive items to make them deal more damage is a very good recipe for getting top 4s.
Yeah, and then we also saw the 4 Hunters. So 4 Hunters, obviously there was a Yone 2 that really helped buff that composition up. But outside of that Yone 2, we still say that Hunters are generally a really good comp to go for.
Yeah, well, any comp with a sustained damage synergy is always going to be relevant, if not super strong. At least they're playable, and Ashe is still definitely under that category. She's still playable, she still deals damage. She wasn't really hit as hard as Talon was. None of her base mechanics were removed. So yeah, she's definitely still a good option.
We'll have to see in Game 2, which we'll be going into very soon, if these players continue to try to do things that are a little bit more diverse, because I really did love that Dazzler start by Numano. And then we did have a player try Duelist. Did not end up well for him, but to be fair, I do think he bled out a little bit too early in the games, because by the time we saw him winning, he was already at 33 HP with Benva there. So we'll have to see if maybe he can save a little bit more health before pivoting into a composition like that one, or maybe hitting his power spike just earlier. So starting here, we see Spencer here getting his bow. I believe he started with bow as well in the first game. So that's both times being the carousel champion.
Yeah, he's definitely running straight for that bow. Bow is just still, again, just very high priority for the Zed carry comp. For even if you want to carry Warwick, you have the option of building Runons. You could build RFC on him in a pinch, as we saw last game. But yeah, bow start is still very good. I personally usually go for a tier start because I like jamming early game items. And fun fact, if you start tier, there's no combination of 2 other items you can get that doesn't result in you having a jammable item. So if you start tier, usually your early game jammable items are at least top tier.
I'm going to counter that. Double Giant's Belt.
So you can't actually get drop 2 of the same item on the first group round.
Okay.
Yeah, but 2 Giants Belt would be not amazing. It's unfortunate. Warmugs used to be a very top tier item, but ever since the changes, which are deserved changes, they've definitely gotten a lot weaker.
So tier, obviously, we say the best item would be Chalice, though, or a item such as Hodge.
So you can jam stuff like Hodge, Chalice, even Ludens. If you get something early game that can use it, like a Lissandra with Ludens plus Dazzle actually does a ton of damage. Even Nami, with the Nami nerfs, Ludens is still very good on her because she procs the damage right up front, the Ludens double damage, where the condition is if the enemy target is CC'd, you deal twice the damage from Ludens.
Hold on, I'm just staring at Spencer right now with his one Elise taking across the entire board. I mean, Elise with her lifesteal should be able to win, but do you think there's any reason why Spencer didn't pick up any other units?
So I believe he was just waiting to see if he got any gold, because if he gets a gold drop from putting on only one cost unit there, he might be able to make 10 gold. Although, yeah, putting out one Elise there is a little bit risky. We saw the HP drop into the 10s there, but he manages to pull through.
That felt like a very... I mean, I'm gonna assume that he has tried that before and knew that it would work, but in my end, it just felt like a really risky science experiment. That I was like, lifesteal on Elise does work, but it seems a little close for comfort in my end.
Yeah, I can say from personal experience that you might think a Garen would be able to do that, but a Garen definitely is not able to.
But hits the Kindred here, which is really strong.
Yeah, Kindred early game is extremely powerful unit. You could just run it with no synergies and it'll still top DPS in most of your fights. But he also gets a sharpshooter chosen here, so he'll probably decide to pick that up instead of fielding the Kindred right away. He gets the Runons as well. He'll probably end up holding it, maybe. I don't know exactly if he's willing to jam Runons. But Runons is playable on Ashe, Warwick, and Zed, so it's a fairly flexible item, especially after the buffs has gotten a lot of value.
Can you explain why Runons has been so good in this current meta? Because I feel like outside of many Kalista duelists in the past, Runons was never really used that often prior to this patch.
Yeah, so Runons got buffed recently, where now it basically does the same damage on the almost the same damage on the Runons bolt as I forgot the exact number, but I believe is it 75 or is it 100? Well, either way, it enables a unit that only hits one target to hit 2. So last qualifier, a lot of people Runons on Talon because Talon's ability procs the Runons. while he might not proc his jump off the Runons, it's still doing a ton of damage. So now you can just look at it as a flat high damage increase item.
So it's almost like a sharpshooter buff within an item.
Yeah, pretty much. And sharpshooters early game especially is very effective. Again, because it procs off every auto attack, you get a lot of value out of it because you're auto attacking a lot early game.
All right, and then jumping over to Numano here, who has 3 Warlords raised, so a really good start on a 1-win streak. So we'll see if he's able to keep that up. He was able to slam a Guinsoo on a Teemo here. So we'll have to see how that fares since there's no sharpshooters yet, but Teemo with the blind could still be a very good unit with a CC.
Yeah, Teemo early game is definitely slept on. I think he's one of the best 2 costs in the game. His blind is very high value again because everybody auto attacks a ton early game. But also because he just does a lot of damage. His AoE, I believe, is 300 at 1 star, which is actually a decent chunk. He also has a Zed in his shop, so he could have considered taking the Zed and maybe running Ginsu Zed here for early game. Although sticking with the Teemo is perfectly fine. He does get messed up a little by the Luden's Nami with 3 cultists.
I believe it was say.
I think that is one of the strongest boards you can have early game. Luden's Nami 2 with a Cultist chosen Elise. I can't imagine anything scarier than
say Luden's Nami was weaker though. So do you think he is something that he would commit to, or he's just having that for the start?
He's definitely just using that for the start. I think he has a Cultist chosen. It's definitely a very easy way of making it to level 9 if he chooses to. I would say go on a limb here and say that's probably the strongest realistic level 4 board you can find on 2-2. So I wouldn't expect to see M3-5 lose many rounds from here on out.
But what would you put the Ludens on later on? Because obviously in the past there's just stick with the Ludens Nami, but what is Ludens really good on outside of Nami or even Teemo in the past, especially when you're running Cultist in the earlier mid game?
So you can run it on pretty much any legendary. Like starting mana plus AP is a good stat combination for any legendary in the game. It's also very good on units like Kayn and Yone who cast a lot. The starting mana and the AP are very good for both of them, and because they're casting so often, they'll be proccing it often as well.
Fair enough. And then Numano managed to get his win back. Unfortunately, he did lose there, but he was against a very strong board. So as he's looking for it, so one thing is that we talked about with Numano was that he did have a Zed in his shop before, and already a Guinsoo's made. And thing is he did pick it up, and I feel like majority of the players in this lobby normally would have picked up that Zed immediately, considering how much they want to just force it, I suppose.
So I think it's because he's running Warlords right now, and he's looking for he already has a Nidalee and a Garen too, and the Teemo complements the Nidalee better by having sharpshooter buff rather than running a Zed with no synergy. It is debatable whether that's better or not, but because Ginsu isn't a core item on Zed, it's actually okay. He wouldn't be using that Zed as an item holder anyway, and he'd have to sell and remake it if he chose to play Zed. So I think this running the Teemo is perfectly okay.
Yeah, and then he is putting the Tahm in. So he's been holding the Tahm Kench for a while now. Tahm Kench obviously a very strong tank in the early game, but it's rare for someone prioritize it. Like, for example, I would think that another decision is potentially selling the 2 Tahm Kenches for that Zed, just to at least deny other players from hitting that Zed potentially. But proven here, though, now he has that Tahm Kench 2, which is a really strong front line to protect the Teemo as well.
Yeah, he's probably just holding on to it because it's a pair, and it's fairly useful early on to have a Tahm Kench 2 be a tank. As you said, Tahm Kench is just a super tanky unit, just good frontline overall. He does have the 2-star Vanguards, so it is a little interesting to me as well to see him not pick up a Zed and favor Tahm Kench instead, especially with no synergies. But yeah, it ended up paying off for him. He ended up hitting the Tahm Kench 2, so he gets an extra 2-star unit on his field.
Yeah, and then this Lysandra is actually doing a lot more work than I expected. Granted, it is 1 versus 4, and Kurumx was guaranteed to lose there, but the Lysandra stayed alive for quite a while with that Hodge, or longer than I expected. So we'll have to see how much that Lysandra cares, because probably from the last game, seeing how much Numano was able to go to stage 4 with 92 HP just by a Lysandra 2, I think more players might be experimenting with the Lysandra to see how long this unit can save HP for them.
Yeah, Chosen Dazzler has a ton of value early game, and he does have the Moonlights in. Unfortunately, he only has the Diana 1 so far, so it's only making a Diana 2 with the buff. But as soon as he gets that Diana 2, he'll be having either a Silas 3 or a Lysandra 3, both of which are extremely good HP savers. Krim is looking to be better on track, but now he is up against the 3 Mage Cultist Chosen, which is definitely the scariest thing you can see early game. This is almost 100% a loss for Kurumx. I'd be amazed if he even killed 2 units, I'd say. Probably not even killing a single one. But Oh,
Oof.
he almost got that Lulu.
I think he
Oh, he
might be
might
able to
kill
get
it
the
in the
Lulu,
end.
yeah.
Yeah, he got it in the end. Wow,
The
this
Haj is
Lissandra's
doing a
putting in
lot of
mad work
work.
there.
Oh no.
Yeah, it's expected for him to lose that fight very badly. It just depends on by how much. The Nami nerfs actually made it so the Nami ulted a lot slower than I expected. I expected the Nami to ult much sooner and just straight up kill the Lissandra. He luckily saved 2 HP out of it, but can you really call it lucky if you're seeing that kind of board in your lobby?
I mean,
I don't know.
another half a second because the Nami ultimate did stop the Lysandra, but another ult and I believe 2 more units would have been killed off, and then that would be pretty lucky and good for Kurum.
Yeah, for sure. It was definitely very close to saving another 4 HP. And these small HPs actually add up and matter a lot late game, especially when you're down to the situations that everybody is familiar with, where you end up being at 5 HP and you look at the leaderboards or you look at the HP bars and every single person is sub 10 HP and you're praying for a top 4. I'm sure everybody's experienced that at least once or twice.
Yeah, and one thing that I have been loving as well is that there's been so much hype about Zed in the community that I did expect that a lot of players might potentially come in here just hard forcing the Zed comp. As usually there are a few players with that kind of mentality, but we have seen with Numano and also Kurum here, like they see the Zed, but obviously with their current board doesn't really fit well. It's not their strongest board and probably not going to go for it. And so they decide to immediately sell it or not even pick them up in the first place.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, Zed is one of those comps where you have to commit early on or get out. Like if you don't have the right items for it and you hit the chosen Zed, it's not even super amazing. Like yeah, you can run it for a couple of turns, but it's not going to be your end game comp. As we can see here, 1109 has the RFC Zed already. He's prepped for the build. He's ready to play this to the end game. But if you don't prep for it early on, like from even starting from stage 1 with the first item that you take, it's not necessarily a good idea to just hard force it.
Fair enough. So we'll have to see what kind of composition Kurum ends up pivoting to. Haj and tier user items are still pretty flexible for almost any type of composition. So I'm curious to see what direction he'll go.
Yeah, tier items tend to be flexible into pretty much every comp. Even the Zed comp, you can run Chalices, you can run Blue Buff Akali as we saw Treebeard did.
So finally able to hit that Diana 2, which is actually a huge power spike for him because now that Lysandra will finally be Lysandra 3 and not just keep buffing that Diana into a Diana 2. So we'll have to see if this enables him to save a lot more health and go on a potential win streak. I mean, granted, he doesn't go against M35S anytime soon again, which algorithm-wise, he has a couple rounds. Or Numana, who actually has 94 HP, so I believe he was running Warlords in the Tom Kench, so doing really well there as well.
Yeah, I was actually just sitting here wondering if Kurum would make this level up to fit in 3 Elderwoods as well. I was thinking that he should, because Kindred, while it does damage, isn't actually that tanky, and he already has the Lysandra 3 for damage, which is nice. But he is against a Cultist player here. We'll have to see if the Lysandra 3 can beat it. I personally think it can. With Dazzler, Galio is actually not a threat at all. It looks like he's going to win this fight. And yeah, Kurum's on his way to saving his HP and making it to level 8 here with this build.
Yeah, and then we also saw how much that Haj has been sustaining that Lysandra, where even Firestar we thought was just going to be completely demolished. That Lysandra was just 1v6 and able to take down at least 1 or 2 units, even when it was only tier 2. So that's tier 3. Haj is working out well with the lifesteal. I feel like Kurum has a really good chance of winning all the way to the next round, or sorry, neutral rounds. But we'll have to see because he hasn't faced Numano in a while, which is also the other stronger contender.
Yeah. He did get lucky and face M3 right at the end of stage 2 there, so it's pretty unlikely for him to see him all the way at the end of stage 3 here, which is the earliest he can fight him. Looking at Benva's board here, he does look like he's trying to play some form of AD carry, either Warwick or Ashe, I'm guessing. But it does just straight up get one shot by a damage roll on the Hand of Justice on the Lysandra 3. This unit is definitely able to carry him for an extended period of time. I'm curious to see if he actually makes the leap and goes for a blue buff on the Lysandra just to make sure that his damage is the damage uptime on the Lysandra is super consistent. I think it's a pretty worthwhile pickup here if he does manage to get the tier. Obviously, because a lot of people have spatulas, they might be going for the other spatula to finish that Force of Nature, get the extra power an extra unit gives.
Yeah, and then the items or units that he's been holding is a Kindred, Aurelia, and then also another Brawler, Elderwood. So there's a chance that he might be aiming for Ashe here. In that case scenario, the tier might not be the best, but definitely really strong for him currently. Or will we see him go towards a more Ashe items? Because the Haj can't go on the Ashe, but we'll see with the glove or the cloak here.
Yeah, so his options here are either Chalice, Haj, or Blue Buff. The Hodge is definitely more flexible. It gives him options to, like, running 2 Hodges on any carry is still a viable choice. If they both roll damage, you have a carry doing pretty much twice as much damage as it normally should. If they all roll healing, your carry is never going to die, and so on and so forth. If you get a mix, it's still very good. You're getting a lot of value out of this item. This item is just overall a super flexible, good gem. Definitely my favorite item in the game, like by far. I think it's the best one. He chooses to go with the Hodge. I think I probably would have chosen the blue buff, but that I'm definitely favoring Yone and Kane, and blue buff is a very powerful item on both of those right now.
I mean, we saw that Hodge was doing well on Lissandra, so why not get a second one on her just to keep it up? But
Yeah.
hopping over to 1109 here, he did go to level 6 with only 17 gold, so he did roll down a bit. Found a duelist, Kalista here, and on a 4 loss streak, so he's taking quite the damage, and he needed to protect his HP, but I don't think that's the case against Benva here with the Vayne.
Yeah, it looks like he's trying to hard force Zed with his items, RFC Runons. But as it is the case right now, if you try to hard force a comp, you got to be very careful with your HP. He's been bleeding out for some time now. He rolled down as well, which is not recommended before level 7. The odds of hitting a Shen are like actually half as much as they normally are. But he chooses to make the jump anyway. He doesn't quite find it. He doesn't have duelist in either for this Kalista, so it's significantly weaker than it should be. But at least he has a cultist chosen. Maybe he can go 6 cultists and scrape some HP.
Yeah, I was just gonna say, being at 5 loss streak, 50 HP, and 21 gold, and level 6, not even close to level 7. Are you basically committed to a cultist path at this point, holding that cultist Kalista?
I think legitimately his only out is maybe selling this Kalista and getting a Zed chosen, because I don't think a Kalista carry here with a 6 cultists is strong enough to survive, especially with these items. These items are very good offensively, but the issue is there's so many backline carries right now where either you have Hunter procs or you have Zed, that the Kalista would just die very fast. So yeah, it's definitely a very concerning position to be in for him.
Yeah, I was just gonna say this is difficult for sure, because it's like you don't want to roll down on 6 anymore because you pretty much already hit the power spike that you could hitting that Kalista. But if you wait out anymore, because he's continuing to bleed even after that roll down. So pushing to 7 and do another roll down, at that point it seems like it's just gonna be at the same time that other people are getting their power spike. So what would you say is his out? Like, you did mention the Zed, but is that his only out, really just selling that Kalista, which is potentially his only life?
I actually think it might be his only out. You see him picking up the Akali here. I think he's considering selling it on this turn right now. He's thinking maybe I need this just to beat Wolves, but I think his only out is legitimately to try to hit Zed here, because if you hit Z2 from this position with these items and you get a QSS, you might actually be able to stabilize and come back for at least a top 4. But with Cultists from this position, Cultists tend to bleed HP as soon as they're out of the level 7 early game, like the early on level 7 where people are still trying to put together their boards. As soon as they hit their stuff, it's going to be a lot harder. He does find the 6 Cultists here, but the 6 Cultists is significantly weaker considering most of his units are actually 1-star. Right now, I'm thinking that he's just waiting a little bit. He's probably going to level next turn and roll down and try and hit that Zed. But for one turn, he's going to be using the 6 cultists to try and save some HP.
If you're trying to hit Zed, though, would it not be better to roll down on 6 instead of 7?
So yeah, for Zed specifically, but without Shen, that comp doesn't function, so it needs to level just to hit the Shen. And with the 4-cost nerf at level 7, the odds he hits Shen are actually not that high here. Maybe like 40%, I'd say, with the amount of money he has. Spends 24 on leveling, 40 gold left. Yeah, around 40%, I'd say.
Well,
so it's not a great
9
chance.
here, at least not taking the L, so saving some health at least with the 6 cultists, and hopefully maybe even another round before you can get to level 7 to roll down.
Yeah, you'll notice Numano is also level 6, so it looks like he's doing the same thing. He's just waiting one round so that the XP bar is on a good interval. If you level here, you actually lose quite a lot of gold. I'd say 9 gold-ish if you choose to roll all the way down as well.
So we expected him to potentially roll here, but it seems like he wants to try to econ a little bit more. No, there you go. He does go to level 7. Will he sell into the roll down, though? It seems like he's holding off.
So I'm actually amazed that he's choosing to not roll down here. I would be terrified if I were in his position. But props to him if he can make it through this rough part in stage 4. If he can somehow make it to level 8 with this board, which I think he'll eventually need to roll down anyway. But if he can somehow make it to level 8 with this board, that's good for him. Like, it's definitely a very big benefit to roll at level 8 instead of level 7 with the improved 4-cost odds.
I feel like with this play is potentially maybe squeezing in a 6th or 5th place, right? But then your play with the Zed is honestly his out of trying to get top 4 versus if he doesn't hit that Zed, that would basically be an 8 without that Cultist Callista.
So I would actually argue that what he's doing right now is a lot more 1st or 8th because if he doesn't make it to level 8 here, he is 30. He's going to be 20 in his 20s HP, and he's going to have no board. He's going to have to fix his board entirely. He might choose to roll here. He hit the Shen. He's going. Yep.
Okay, after that one more hit, 31 HP is pretty scary.
Yep, he's looking for that Zed. He's holding the 2-cost, trying to find that Zed still.
Hitting all these other 2-cost chosens with the Annie and then the Teemo, but finds a Kali, but no Zed. I mean, this is a gamble. Oh my god!
He actually. Oh my goodness, that is a high roll and a half. He actually manages to find the Zed chosen. Now he's actually somewhat stable, and he's gonna pick up a cloak off this next carousel for QSS at the same time. It's actually looking good for him now. He's even at 30 HP. And this is, I think, one of the bigger concerns for most people about this patch is that if you do this, and even if you're weak, if you happen to hit the Z2, it doesn't even have to be chosen. If you get the Z2, you get so much power out of it that like you might just end up winning. This Evelyn almost won. It was so close.
Here's the thing: he is at 24 HP, and other competitors are gonna hit level 8 way before him. So I still think that he's in a pretty dangerous spot, but as you mentioned, I mean, even hitting that Zed chosen there is a miracle in itself, in my opinion. But we'll see if it does stabilize him enough, as you mentioned before, because he does have all 4 of the ninjas.
Yeah, if I were him here, I'd actually keep rolling. There are some upgrades you can find, right? The Evelyn 2 is definitely a very big upgrade. If you find some more Kennons, you get a Kennon 2. The Elise isn't as big a deal, but you get to have an extra stack on your Galio, which always helps. We'll have to wait and see what he does though with the Nico in his bench as well.
Yeah, I'm super curious because at this point you might. The thing is, you don't really want to Nico any of the other units because you already got your 2 stronger ones, which is the Akali and the Zed, and you're nowhere near 3-starring any of those units. So really, what are you using that Nico for? You might as well just slam it onto the Shen, I suppose, if you can find a second one.
Yeah, probably just end up getting some extra tanky frontline, even though the comp doesn't revolve too around frontline. He might even consider using it for the Evelyn here just to make sure he doesn't die. He's going to keep rolling down to 0. Try and see if he can hit that at the very end. Looks like he's choosing not to. That's understandable. I mean, Nicoing a 3-cost just doesn't feel very good.
Yeah, but he is in a position that doesn't feel very good in the first place. So it might require some type of decision. But we'll see here, going against Benva here, who has a Zet already, and running some... That was the Jax that just died, and then the set is still in the back line. I believe that this is just a pretty clean hit. I actually don't know what Benva was running there. I saw some Divine units, and then a set in the front.
I believe he's going for some mix of Divine and Ashe. He has the Deathblade and the Runons, which are good items on both the Warwick and the Ashe. Unfortunately, he doesn't actually have a properly set up Warwick or Ashe yet. He's probably going to try to keep rolling. I don't know if he can make it to level 8 with that board, but we'll have to wait and see. Here's a Kennen for 1109 here. He's almost spiked, but there is another Zed player with much more HP and pretty good items, I'd say. Triple Zeke's is a huge power boost, but the Zed does not have RFC. So at the end of the day, I think maybe Treebeard's path to victory here is actually going to level 9 and playing random legendaries with this. I don't know if his Zed will be able to carry him to the end of the game, but he definitely has so much money that he has the option of doing that.
Yeah, he's basically the better version of what 1109 has, and also like 10 times more gold. So
yeah, it is better, but he doesn't have the RFC. Not having the RFC is a big deal. This Zed is going to spend some time walking around occasionally. You'll see he gets CC'd, no QSS, and he's not able to kill the Zed off here. So
the thing with Treebeard is that we did see him play Zed in the last round as well, and he also didn't have a RFC on the Zed prior. He had an RFC, but it was on the Akali instead. So we do see that Treebeard has been playing Zed a lot, but in a more flexible way than other competitors.
Yeah, I mean, I personally see Zed as a way of saving HP because he's such a strong unit, and I want to go 9 and try and find legendaries. But a lot of people have made the reroll Zed work as well. Hitting the 3-star Zed with perfect items is definitely a game winner.
Yeah, so we'll have to see here. I mean, I'm gonna say that for me, level 9 specifically, especially how Treebeard is just so much more ahead. I would say level 9 is looking like a bottom 4 unless he high rolls and do some perfect items that maybe can squeeze in 4th place just because his health is so low already. And then Treebeard will have to he is able to get at least a dirt or above like he did last time with this variation of Zed.
Yeah, I was amazed when 1109 chose not to roll on that first turn after he leveled and instead waited one. I guess it ended up paying off because he did hit the chosen Zed with only 6 gold left. He might not have had enough. I want to see. Yeah, okay, so he does choose to pick this up. I think he will be pivoting this into an Ash comp with Elderwoods. Because his items, while they work with the Zed, they're not actually that good. Even though he has a Kennen 2 and an Akali 2, it feels a little bit like a waste. But I think in the long run, he'll feel happier about pivoting this off of Zed. He can't do it right away, though, because a Kennen 2 and an Akali 2 is still very high value to have on the board. He hasn't found the Evelyn either because, well, I mean, just got unlucky, I guess.
And triple Zeeks on any carry is pretty scary. So eventually, when you do pivot out of this comp, having those triple Zeeks onto the Ash, I would say would be really strong. And Spencer here holding a Jin 2 and then also has a Yone in the front. The Jin 2 does prevail.
Yeah, I think we'll see Treebeard fix up his comp on this next turn. He'll probably start selling off the ninjas, move the items to the Ash, and work from there.
Yeah, let's see. So he does find a Warwick, a really good pickup for him to proc the Hunters. And he only has 24 gold, though, so maybe he wants to grade out slightly more before the full pivot, but we'll see here.
I think he'll probably roll it down. Yeah, he does need to fix this up. The Zed is not enough to carry from here. I'd like to see him sell off most of the ninjas here. Maybe keep the cultist for one turn if he has to. Yeah, he needs to swap it off just because the Zed doesn't have RFC or Shade, which means it's not actually able to carry him for very long.
Right, and then at this point, what would be the third item that you're looking for that Ash? Will you want another aggressive items, or do you want to find a defensive item for her?
It depends. It varies from lobby to lobby, but I would say on this one, you definitely want an offensive one because when you're facing a Zed, if the Zed is hitting your Ash, you're already dead. And if the Zed's not hitting your Ash, well, you don't need a defensive item. Mm-hmm. So unless you get like a GA or something, I would say go damage.
Yeah, and we did see Treebeard took a pretty big hit here, so I might have jinxed it completely. Level 9 actually on a win streak, and then we have Benva and Kurumx at the bottom again, but we'll have to see how they do later on in the rounds, and there's still always a chance for them. We have seen those 1 HP comebacks, so pick out this Juani, making a more proper front line for those Hunters, and doing the full pivot now with some legendaries and Elderwood popped in there.
Yep, it's looking pretty good. This build definitely works out. He still has Kennen to pivot, but obviously you can't just throw out a Kennen 2 willy-nilly. His board is looking okay. Definitely stronger than Kurumx here. Kurumx does have the blue buff Riven and the Yone, which is very scary, but the Ash and the set plus the triple Zeeks might be enough. Although it looks like Yone has done a little bit too much work on shredding the enemy front line. And yeah, Kurum's build actually ends up winning here with a Yone 1 and an Ash 1 against Ash 2.
Yeah, and then the positioning kind of worked out too, where their Ash 1 was able to get on the Treebeard's Ash earlier.
Yeah, so I actually straight up thought that Kurumx would lose that fight, but I guess Yone 1 proves me wrong. The unit is very, very strong right now. The buff to the armor and MR shred is actually huge because from 60 to 90 doesn't actually sound like a lot, but when you think about how much damage the armor is cutting off, the effectiveness of the armor is reduced by 75%, basically. The remaining armor. You can look at it from the ratio of the remaining armor.
This is going to be pretty close here. We have 5 HP, 7 HP, and then even Treebeard 1109 could potentially get knocked out depending on their fight if it's too one-sided, so...
Yeah, if 1109 had maybe the 7 HP he wouldn't have lost if he rolled down 1 turn earlier, it would actually be looking like a top 2 for him, I'd say. Oh, but if Treebeard hits the Kane 2 here, it's a whole different story. Kane is also a very good carry, on par with Yone almost.
Not too much gold to roll down, but he does have a lot of gold on his bench, so I'm surprised he's not selling off some of his new-news in order to roll down a bit more.
Yeah, I would have liked to see him roll down a bit too, but I think he's thinking that at 13 HP, he doesn't die unless he takes a 4-0? And I think he's assuming that this board won't get 4-0'd.
Well, we'll see here. Going against Numano here, who is towards the top, not on a scary win streak, at least running the warrior composition. And the work took a little bit of time to just kind of go through different tiles. Finally gets on the cane here, and I believe he is getting the more than 4-0'd.
Yep. So that means Treebeard does get knocked out here. The Warwick with proper items is definitely a threat. If he has QSS, you can't really stop it with Dazzle. You can't CC it. You can't do anything to it. He'll just chew through your team. The Runons helps him get resets. If the Runons hit something else that dies, then he gets the Roar. Although I do believe they actually removed that. I could be wrong. I haven't seen a Warwick face like reset off Runons in quite some time. I could be wrong about that. But there is a Yone 2 chosen in the game. I did just see it as he was panning through. So this game is looking kind of rough for everybody else.
Yeah, I saw a Yone 2 chosen, I saw a Riven chosen, Aatrox chosen, and the 1109 actually did hit a Z3 as well. He did take a pretty massive hit and went down to 1. So we'll have to see here how this is going to fare, especially here running a Sharpshooter chosen with the Jhin as well that we saw was pretty strong in the mid game, but no Yone 2 against Bertasaurus right now. So really good Aatrox ult, and then we see the Cultist from the other side coming down. Jhin pushing out a lot of damage in the corner. Yone still on the other side as well. So it's just kind of the Jhin versus Jhin right now, but one Jhin gets taken down, the other GA prevails. And we have Yone here. Oh, he does take it through with the gunplay. The gunplay actually did a really good work with the Yone there.
Yep, Gunblade is one of the best in slot items for Yone here. Hodge is also extremely good. If you roll damage, he does a ridiculous amount of damage. If you roll healing, it functions as a second Gunblade. So overall, that Yone put in a ton of work. Definitely worth the 5 gold he paid for it. Spencer is also the healthiest in the game with the most amount of gold in the game. He's definitely looking to be in a good spot. Although M3,
He's
5... Yeah, he has the Lilia 2, the Yone. He was the one who was running the Cultist Mage early game, which let him go fast 9 on 5-5 and have enough money to roll down, buy a Lilia 2 and a Yone 2. So that goes to show you what a Cultist opener with Ludens can do.
Marcus was the player that hit a Yone 2 in the last game as well, right?
Yeah, he actually was. I guess he's the Yone Whisperer.
I suppose fast 9, Yone 2, easy peasy. So let's see. Well, I actually don't know positively if M35S got the Yone 2 through the level 9 chosen this time, but actually he has to. I saw that was a chosen Yone. So both times at level 9 he was able to hit it. So Spencer here not going for level 9. He's actually going to greed at. Oh, he did push it. Okay.
Level 9, yeah. He's probably doing that because he saw a Z3 and a Yone 2, and he's assuming that he is now playing for top 4, or with his HP probably just top 3. But I would say that leveling here does lose you 9 gold because you lose the 5 gold you would have made, and you lose the 4 gold that you could have saved. Although I think it's a respectable decision given that he scouted and saw the other comps. He does lose to majority of the boards out there, so you are playing for a top 4 at this point. The Z3 might just make a comeback, even though he was pretty much dead the whole game. Hitting that Z3 with perfect items is a very relevant carry for sure.
Ember actually took a pretty big hit there as well. I'm not sure if he lost to Bertasaurus or 1109, but even with the Yone 2, still got lost. Yeah.
I would probably guess that he lost to 1109. I don't think many comps are capable of beating a chosen Yone 2 with 3 items. But yeah, we'll have to wait and see.
Yeah, new mono there, the work got to very low actually, but managed to barely survive and take down the rest of the unit. So right now, it's Spencer against the level 9. So we have the Keeper Sharpshooter Cultist player against the Z3, which the Z3 is just probably, he does have perfect items for the Z as well.
Yeah, this is definitely looking rough. I don't think there's many things that Spencer's board can do against the Z. Hasn't even touched it once. The Shade mechanic is too much, and Spencer gets knocked out from his 19 HP.
Yeah, and then Bertasaurus also gets knocked out here, so it's just Numano and also MD5S. Numano actually takes down MD5S in this battle as well. So the question is the Yone 2 the weakest one out of the 3 players right now? I would have expected Numano to be, but no, the King and the Warwick has been doing a lot of good work.
So what's interesting about the Warwick versus Yone matchup is Warwick actually gets most of his tankiness from Divine, which reduces damage, and because he has the healing built into his kit, he can sustain through some of Yone's damage and actually come out on the better end.
Yeah, and then he's looking to position, most likely going against the Z3 player right now. Does leave the Zillion onto the right side. I thought he might have switched it over, but turns out he was able to face MD5S again, so not against the Z3 as he thought.
Yeah,
So
the
we'll be able to see
QSS
this
is helping
fight.
him a ton in this fight. The Lilia 2 isn't able to CC the Warwick, and there's no dazzles or any shenanigans happening there. But a good combo between the Yone and the Kayn does manage to take him out. The Zed does get knocked out by him as well.
Oh.
So Warwick is a pretty good counter to Zed in the sense that you get to sustain, and the Runon bolts can hit the Zed. So it's pretty lucky for M3 that he managed to knock him out for him, because I'm pretty sure M3's build actually loses to the Zed, even with the Yone 2.
If 1109 didn't take that much damage in the early games, I would say that normally that Zed count could win and definitely would at least top 2 in the lobby. But just because by the time he hit the Zed, he was already below 30 HP, and then a couple rounds ago he was only at 1 HP. So it makes sense that it was a top 3, but even then...
Yeah, but really if you think about it, getting a top 3 from that position that he was in is definitely a very powerful comeback. If you get that... oh, he hits the King 2 here. That is a big game changer. King 2 gives a ton of value in this fight specifically because Kayn is the majority of the damage into the backline, as Warwick is going to be spending most of his time hitting frontline here.
Yeah, and interesting enough, Warwick actually got nerfed multiple times ever since War Week, so it's actually, in a way, nice to see him being in the meta, but not insanely strong, but still strong enough to compete. But Yone here getting a really good group on the left side. The Warwick stays alive, but I don't know if it's going to be enough there.
Pretty sure this Kayn is got really good items for this specific matchup and is able to pull this one through. We'll have to wait and see, though. It is still possible for this Kayn to 1v9 here. I've definitely seen it before, especially a red Kayn. A red Kayn can definitely out-heal. Depends on the Yone targeting.
Ooh, the battle of the legendaries.
It was close, but I think Yone does clean this one up. The Yone does have good items, and the Kayn's items are only mid-tier.
Yep, and that would be, I believe, 2 games in a row now with Marcus and a Yone 2 chosen winning the game. So honestly, we say it because Yone 2 is really strong, but it took skills to get there to even win the lobby in the first place. So kind of what would you say was the strategy that Marcus excelled in order to even get to the point where he could always hit that chosen Yone?
So it looks like he's having a really good early game every game. This game we saw him field a Luden's Nami with a chosen Cultist Elise. He got the 3 mage and the 3 cultists early on, the mage utility with the CC coming through and the Luden's damage, plus the cultist CC and the Galio damage is just too much for any early game comp to handle. So he was able to ride that comp pretty much all the way up to level 9. As we saw, he was level 9 on 5-5 with a Yone 2 and a Lilia 2.
And then we also saw in both games that there was a Sid 3 player, and both times, although it wasn't perfect, well, the second one was actually perfect, even though it was kind of low HP by the time he hit it, but both times it was actually 3rd place, and we saw him losing out to Numano, who was running Warwick. So would you say that Warwick is actually potentially a superior comp to Zed, and what would be the reason in this matchup at least?
So I would say in this matchup, Warwick does a pretty good job. He reduces the damage taken from Zed with his Divine. It's pretty useful. He's a tanky carry. The Runons are able to deal with the Zed on the side. And overall, that matchup isn't very good for Zed, but Zed does excel in most of the other matchups. And Warwick doesn't do as well into Yone and Kayn, even though he still stands a chance.
Yeah, so let's take a look at the scores right now and see how the standings are. So Mark is doing amazing here so far. Double first places at 20 points. So looking at the point system here, he only needs a 5th or above to at least hit the first threshold. Obviously, you don't want to just go for the middle of the 24 points. You want to go above and beyond because you could potentially just win off of the second win condition as well. And then close behind him, we have Numano, who actually went second, and then we have Spencer here, who went third and third. So we have these 3 players here who, I mean, consistent has to be the word for them right now. Sorry, I meant 4th and 4th for Spencer, not 3rd and 3rd. But 3 players, super consistent. And Kurumx and Benva still struggling a little bit in the bottom. But again, this format has been made that even players on bottom can come back. So what are you looking forward to see in the next games, Kiting?
I want to see if M3 can continue his domination. I want to see if he gets that Yone 2 again in the next game. And I also want to see if anybody in the lower points can come back with the mechanic of reaching 24 points and then winning. I think it'd be pretty cool to see that. We haven't seen it come back yet, I believe. Not like a really close comeback, at least. We've seen Kurumx come close in, I believe, the first or the second qualifier.
The first one, yes.
The first one, yeah. And it was really close. He almost got there. And I think it'd be really cool if he could do it this time.
Yeah, so we'll have to see. We'll be coming back soon with Game 3 after a 5-minute break. So see you guys there soon. Welcome back to the Challenger Series. We're heading into Game 3 very soon. And actually, during this 5-minute break, Kiting and I were analyzing the scores and just trying to figure out who is placed where and what this entails for the Game 3. So we'll look at scores back very briefly, but two players that we're going to keep a pretty close eye on, which is Marcus and Numano. So both of these players are very close in hitting the 24 points mark. Getting 2 first place in a row, only needs a 5th place. And then we have Numano here, who only needs I believe it was a second, in order to get the 24 points. So those two you gotta look out for. But Kiting, if you want to share some of the analytics that we just went over during this little break time that we had.
Yeah, so I was just taking a look, and it looks like Benva right now at 3 points needs a kind of a miracle run to make it. He needs to make sure he top 4s pretty much the next 3 games. He needs to make it to 24 points, have nobody win in that time, and he needs to win the 6th game of the series. And right now it's looking like M3 really just needs to top 4 one game and then win the next one, and he's good to go. And even if that doesn't happen, he might even be able to play for the 40-point option, which I believe nobody has ever hit before. If he top 4s, or I think he needs a top 2 both games, he can actually make it all the way to threshold for reaching 40 points.
Yeah, that is correct. And then a strategy we talked about that was kind of interesting. So obviously in competition, full griefing is never allowed or welcome for competitive integrity. But there are certain decisions that is really good for the sake of the tournament, right? Like if you know that a player might potentially win if he gets that bow, you want to take that bow away from him. Or if you see a player is excelling by playing Zed every single game, you might want to hold some Zed units. So these are some strategies that players can do, especially towards Marcus or Numano, who are 2 players that are at the top and very close to hitting that threshold. And since other players aren't guaranteed for the threshold, they still want to rack up points so that they can at least get to 24 points. But at the same time, they want to keep an eye out and scout those 2 players a little bit more just to make sure that they don't get what they need potentially to win the tournament before they do, or at least catch up.
Yeah, I mean, hypothetically, if you're at 23 points, you're 1 point off the threshold and you're already at like 5th place. You might look at the first place guy and be like, hey, that guy's going to win the tournament. If he wins this game, I need to take whatever he needs. So there are some options for griefing there. But yeah, overall, griefing in a tournament is not encouraged.
And it's going to be really close to, because we did talk about this in the first challenge series where Spencer this was the shortest challenge series we ever had. He finished it within 4 games. He hit the 24 points mark, and then he won first place on the 4th game. So we'll have to see if that happens again with Marcus. But someone that I want to talk about is Kurumx. He is struggling a little bit in today's tournament, but he did perform exceptionally well in Challenge Series 1, where he was very close to Spencer, and he was just a hair close in getting that first place and stopping Spencer from winning. And then another player to talk about is actually Spencer, who was very consistent in both games, going 4th and 4th. So again, top 4 both times in a row, and he actually won the Challenger Series before. So we'll have to see if he wants to take that back. I mean, first place is something he's used to, so he's here again to maybe take home the championship and go into the qualifiers too.
Yeah, it'll be exciting to see. Kurumx needs that miracle run, back-to-back first. He gets that 24 and then win the next one. 3 wins in a row and he wins the tournament. I believe in it.
Yeah, so that's the one thing. So yeah, points-wise, we could talk about a little bit how with the format, you could say that, oh, well, this player was doing poorly in the beginning. Like, how did he win the tournament? Well, for a case like Kurumx, he does have to go first. And I think for someone to have this kind of comeback story and to get 3 firsts in a row, I think that guarantees him some type of win for the Challenger Series.
Yeah, that's what's cool about this format is that you can win just by performing well through like 4 or 5 games by getting like high points every game, reaching that 40 points. Or you can perform by maybe having a rough start, but winning a bunch of games at the end, coming back from a point standpoint, and getting that first place as soon as you cross the threshold. There are many options to victory here.
Yeah, so Game 3 is going to start very soon. And TFT is a game, too, where I feel like obviously more games is more consistent. But at the same time, it's something that sucks to be in a tournament where you already know who won, right? Like when you have performed that badly, let's just say you went 8-8-8. Like mathematically, sometimes you just can't ever come back. And granted, that's just how it is, right? Like if you perform that badly, sometimes it's just it for you. But it is good to still have that kind of hope where, you know what? I can still come back. I can get all these firsts, and it'll be a great story when I do.
Yeah, it's good to see. And we have Spencer once again taking the bow. That's just what I'm noticing.
Spencer's carousel, god. And the thing is, he hasn't even been running set every single game. He's just been getting that bow earlier on.
Yeah, bow is definitely still always a good starting option. One we didn't even cover was ZZ Rot. ZZ Rot, even though it got a nerf, is still a really great early game item. Throw that on a 2-star unit, you get a free unit again, basically.
I like how M35S actually asked who won. He wasn't actually 100% sure with the Yone too. But anyways, though, you level 9 here, starting off with double cloaks, which is very unfortunate. So what do you do in this spot? What are you hoping for as your next item? As
you are basically praying. You are basically praying for anything that can combine with a cloak right now. You're praying for a bow or a rod. Usually you can get by with an Ionic Spark early game. Runons gives you at least some direction. Definitely not the most ideal starts. In fact, I'd chalk this up there, right up there with a double belt as an opening. So just overall very bad. But in at least double belt, you can make stuff like Sunfire, Zeeks, and all that. You get some options off the first carousel. But with double cloak, you're kind of just left with jamming a Dragon Claw and just calling it an L and moving on from it.
Well, I hope he level 9 doesn't just say this is an L and move on from it.
Yeah. Well, he needs to. He's one of the people at the middle of the pack right now who actually needs every point he can get. Although I guess everybody needs every point they can get. He's considering jamming this BT. BT early game does have some value, keeps your units alive a bit longer, but does not give you much direction. Ever since the Talon nerfs, you don't get the Talon out. So if you jam a BT here, you're basically saying I'm playing Ashe. And if you don't jam the BT, you're left with jamming Dragon Claw. And Dragon Claw early game, while it's still a useful enough item late game, it doesn't actually do pretty much anything early game. Sometimes it'll block a Lissandra ult, and that's pretty much it.
I feel like at least Bloodthirster is a offensive item to potentially save you a little bit more health. Dragon Claw, I always feel a little bit iffy on. So that's the thing, is that if you don't slam anything, you just hold on for ever, then you're just always holding 3 items on bench, which also feels pretty bad. So if you were in this position, which item would you jam, or if you jam any of them at all?
I would probably just jam Dragon Claw. I mean, 2 cloaks aren't ever going to make anything else. Yeah, you can go out of your way to make a Runons or a Chalice or something, but usually you're going to be taking an item for this BF sword here. What you could also do from this position is if he just full loose streaks and takes a bow, he can maybe try to force Zed again, like he did last game. The BF sword can make a Zeeks, the first cloak can make a Runons, the second one can make a QSS. That's definitely doable. Although it does require him getting 3 bows and a belt from this position, so either you full loose streak for carousel or you play something else.
Right. Well, it seems like that might be the case scenario where just going on that loose streak and grabbing that Runons might be the best, just because the Runons is a pretty flexible item that goes on multiple carries in the current meta. And then we see level 9 here. So here's the thing. If you do want to go on a loose streak and go for the carousel shot, do you still always level on stage 2-1 just to get a better chance of a better chosen and also to mitigate some of the damage potentially?
So I personally wouldn't, just because I can see that if you need 3 bows, you need to be low HP here. You don't really have a choice. But from this position, you could also consider playing Warwick, right? You could do Runons plus a QSS plus a BF sword item. It's always a very good recipe for Warwick. We saw that do pretty well last game. I believe it got a 2nd place. He hits the Nidalee 2 here, though, which also gives him some upgraded unit on his board, which always feels nice. He gets the Vanguards. He's still fielding boards. He's not trying to be weak at all, so he's not open fording for the bow. It looks like he'll be playing something along the lines of either Warwick or Ashe with this. Although we'll have to wait and see, right? Maybe he gets some other items that gives him some other direction.
Well, with set 4 in general, I feel like open fording has been kind of a rare strategy. And then talking about the newest patch as well, player damage has been increased. I mean, not at the very early stages, but still, open fording is just always a scary concept to take extra damage from the start.
Yeah, for sure. It's always a scary thing to do, and if you want gold, you have to fully commit to it. So you just watch your HP fall into the 60s by stage 3. But it is a very good way of securing the exact items you want. Although if it gives you a bad item carousel, what can you do? You know.
So we'll have to see here. So hopefully he doesn't get any defensive carousel, because with his current items, even with defense carousel, I suppose you could go for a giant spell and then just slam his Zeeks instead. But he is really hoping to be able to get a bow so that it can capitalize on some of these Negatron cloaks that he got.
Yeah, the issue with taking a belt off this next carousel is if he does take the belt, at least he has the Zeeks. But when it comes to the next creep round, he has a higher chance of getting a belt than a cloak or a BF sword, which I guess a cloak doesn't matter. But you're less likely to get a BF sword, and you might end up with another belt. And that's where the issue really comes in. When you get 2 belts, you kind of at a loss of what to do.
Yeah, and that's an interesting mechanic that I feel like a lot of the general population don't really think about is that you keep an eye out on the ones that you did get from neutral rounds, right? So that you can plan ahead for carousel and figure out that percentage, right? Like, okay, so I did get cloak and swords already, so chances are is that I'm going to get these less likely in the future, so I should aim for items such as like a bow or a glove.
Yeah, so it looks like he unintentionally open forted here. He didn't really manage to save much HP, but he could have been lower if he just fully opened, I guess. But at least here he can take the bow to start forcing Zed, or if he wants to, he can take a belt, make the early power, and risk getting another belt. It depends on what the carousel is looking like.
I'd be very surprised if he doesn't grab the bow here, just because 1109 the previous two games, or maybe that was his only out, was that he played a Zed. Unfortunately though, the bow did not go on the right side of the carousel, it was the opposite side, there's only one, and Treebeard did take it, so he went for the glove. So here's the thing though, with the glove now, when he slammed Quicksilver, which is a Z item, but doesn't really do anything for you towards the early game, or do you slam the IE so they can at least push out some damage and have a useful item for the early game?
I think given his position that he's already loose streaking, I would probably just go with the QSS. Yeah, it's somewhat useful, but now that Talon is not a champion anymore, he can't really pivot into Talon. He's kind of stuck playing. He's kind of stuck playing either Ashe at that point with the IE or the Warwick. He does have some Warwick items. You could gem the IE and go for Runon's QSS from here, but QSS is safer, and because he's already loose streaking, which is the main reason, he might as well keep loose streaking and get the gold instead.
Is it worth to lose streak though? Just because of the fact that there has been some goal changes in set 4, and the fact is that losing HP in these current metas just seems really scary in general. That would have been better to actually play Cultist and try to. I feel like even just playing Cultist from this spot wouldn't really win him any games. I still feel like he would be fairly weak, but.
We see him mousing over the surrender after seeing the Chosen Zed get taken here. But yeah, I personally like playing the strongest board I can, so I wouldn't be trying to lose streak at all. I would probably have jammed IE. But then again, you could also say just don't start Cloak forehead and be at the same exact spot. Right now, he's definitely pretty far behind. He doesn't have much money. He chose to level, and he's still the weakest. Not through really any fault of his own, but just because he has 2 cloaks. It'll be interesting to see what he chooses to do from there. But Numano has the Chosen Zed already, and he is looking mighty scary.
Yeah, I mean, we have seen Numano in the past playing completely flexibly, opting out, even when he has bow items, to just sell off the Zed. But here, at such early stages in the game, you take when it's just given to you like that.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, Chosen Zed has always been one of the best early game Chosens. Right up along the lines of like almost Kindred Chosen, although Kindred is a 3 cost, so that's not a fair comparison. Maybe I'd say Teemo Chosen. I'd say even against Teemo Chosen, I'd rather have Zed. Just good backline access, good damage overall, drops aggro, super powerful unit early game. I was a little surprised to see the buffs on him in the recent patch, but yeah, overall he's just gotten even stronger now. Early game he's very effective. The buffs on Zed actually get magnified through the fact that his main synergy Shade actually gets is heavily reliant on his attack speed, and he gets 3 bows as well on his ideal item set, which also gets magnified by his base attack speed.
So yeah, overall, and then Numano is a player that we want to look at in general, just the fact that him besides M35S here, it's possible for him to get the 24 points threshold. He does need another second place, and they've been really consistent. Marcus with the double first, and then Numano with the double second. But we do have Bertasaurus here contesting for that number 1 spot, and then Numano holding his spot once again. I feel like every time I look at Numano, it's funny because we talked about last game, it just felt like a deja vu. I remember seeing Numano in second place, 92 HP, and once again, he's there one more time.
Yeah, pretty consistent player, consistent in all ways of the word, for sure. He gets a locket here. I'd be surprised to see him jam the locket from here, given that he has Keeper, although I could see it. He has the option to. I would more expect an Ionic out of him, but locket is still obviously a very good early game item. He has the setup for it. It does look like he's leaning towards Riven this game, maybe a Cultist Dusk mix right here. He has the blue buff, right? And then he has at least 2 already. He's been holding on to some of those units. Doesn't have the Cultist yet, unfortunate, but we can wait and see what he chooses to do here.
Yeah, and then your analysis actually just shows how flexibly you play, because I feel like a lot of times people will see the Chosen Zed, and in their mind they're like, I got the Chosen Zed, I just have to play Zed, but there is no bow items for him. He only has one cloak for him, which is either Runans or the Quicksilver, but honestly no other component, and that's already 4 other components already made with blue buff and then potential locket if he feels like it. So here's the thing, is that in this position, would you ever say it's correct for him to force Zed, or no, like as you mentioned, going for Riven or just playing other comps more flexibly just because you don't have the items for it?
I would actually say he has a higher EV not playing Zed from here, even though he has the Chosen. The Chosen doesn't actually matter too much for the Zed itself. It just matters if you have the correct items for it or not. Wow, he gets a really good Cultist shop here. He's choosing to roll at 6 here because he has so much money. He wants to find a 3-cost Chosen, maybe a Chosen Cultist to carry him through, or pretty much any Chosen unit in general. I'd expect him to keep rolling until he hits one. See if he settles for the Nunu here. He does have an Ashe.
Brawler Chosen isn't really the best one to go for though, right?
It definitely isn't, but given his position, it's still a good enough unit to hold here. I would be okay. I was gonna say I'd be surprised to see him not transfer the blue buff to Akali at least. I also would have liked to see Aatrox over the Ashe, but this is okay as well. The 3 cultists can arguably do more damage than this Ashe 1 with no synergies, but Ashe is still somewhat relevant unit, although in this scenario, Tahm Kench 2 is just blocking all of its damage.
And then debatably though, Numano actually had a pretty solid board previously. I still don't know if it would be enough for Spencer's board because Spencer is extremely strong at the moment. But I would say that Numano's old board wasn't that much weaker than his current board.
Yeah,
was it worth it to sell everything?
I am surprised to see him sell everything. I could have seen him not sell the Zed and then roll a little bit at 6 just to hit another cultist unit, which is fairly likely, right? There are many cultist units he can hit. I believe he also already had the Aatrox and the Pike, so I'm surprised he didn't just field the cultist units and the Chosen Zed and just ride that out until level 8. He definitely probably could have. I'm very, very surprised to see him roll down here.
Yeah, I was just not sell.
He didn't sell the Nunu. He rolled down to 0 gold. He could have found a better Chosen. His board is still the same as before he rolled, so basically he's just losing money here. That was a little surprising to see. We'll see how it pays off for him in the long run.
Yeah, well, to be fair, Numano has been playing very diversely. I mean, mentioned before, but he is a 3 times winner for Fight Night, which is a Master to Challenger level competition, and he plays first 3 times in a row. So I'm curious to see, because right now, this current play is a little bit questionable from our end, just because he did tank a lot of both damage and also gold, and doesn't seem to be rewarded highly for it.
I would care to guess that maybe he is panicking because his HP is lower than it would ideally be at, and he's really just looking for any board right now to field to try and boost his strength. He does find the Riven here, blue buff Riven here, blue buff maybe QSS on top of that, or Ionic. Definitely will save him some HP. But I think if you're rolling at that point, you should sell the Nunu for a better Chosen, because you either roll for a good Chosen there, or you just sit and stand with your board and wait till level 7 to roll when you have slightly better odds. Although at this point, level 6 odds and level 7 odds are extremely similar, so leveling to 7 isn't as big a benefit as it used to be.
Yeah, I'm surprised about Nunu Chosen. Well, to be fair, I thought that he would keep rolling for a better Chosen, which he is doing now, and does hit a... So here's the thing. Did you expect this play from him, for him to keep going and to look for a better... I mean, to be fair, he is very weak, so he doesn't want to strengthen his board, but it seems like it took him over 2 rounds. This is his 3rd round doing so, and it feels like a lot of time commitment for it.
So I'd say this play is actually okay in terms of ladder play, but in the context of the tournament, he needs a top 2 to be able to qualify for the 24 points on this next round. So instead of doing this, I probably would have just sat with a Zed and played for a top 2 and hope that I could live and save as much, greed as much money as possible. Because right here, whether he gets a 3rd or a 6th isn't really that big a deal. Like, there's not much of a difference in the context of his score. So I am very surprised to see him roll down here, knowing what we know about his current standings.
It does spell out, because right now, Numano was the other player that could contest Marcus in the 24 points threshold, and Marcus is doing really well. He is sitting at 1st place with 90 HP. So we go to his point of view right now. He is running 6 Warlords, and so very strong on him right now, holding it at actually a Warlord spat as well. So I feel like he's pretty committed to this pathway, but we shall see.
Yeah, this board just looks incredibly strong at stage 3. 6 warlords, assassins, you got duelist as well. Shinzao too, you have good aggressive early game items. The Ionic and Morello actually is better on Jarvan than it used to be, because usually, or at least the old Jarvan used to ult a little bit too late, so the Morello would get applied too late. But with the new Jarvan's mana, he ults right at the start of a fight, so you get the maximum value out of the Morello. As you can see right here, he ults, he hits 3 priority targets. He might end up losing to the Cultist. We'll have to wait and see, but I feel like he just wins this fight regardless, because his units just flat out outstat everything else right now with the 6 warlords. Does end up breaking Benva's streak, so it's a pretty good deal here.
Yeah, and the thing is with N35S too is that he only needed a 5th or above in order to get the 24 points, but he could also be the first player off of the second points condition. So after this game, unless Nimano is able to get that second place and come back from his current position, MD5S is most likely going to be the only player who is going to have a yes next to his name to qualify for that first place finish. So with that said, that's going to be potentially 7 players trying to agree for at least position against MD5S specifically to make sure that he doesn't get that first. And we'll have to see if MD5S, if he gets first in this lobby and then he goes second, or anything along those lines, he could just win off of just being a overall well player, even without getting the first place.
Yeah, if you actually look at how the scores look, if he top 4s 3 games and maybe 1 or 2 games, like you say, like 3-3-4, he'll actually make it to 40 points and qualify through that. So if he's able to pull through with just pure points, that'd be very impressive, because 40 points is a significantly higher number than what most people get in these Challenger Series.
Yeah, it's definitely going to be a race after this game, so I'm curious to see if it's just going to be Marcus versus the world after this game, or maybe Nimano can squeeze himself up there, so it's going to be a little bit more even out with 2 against, these 2 players are on different teams, but still 2 against the other 6 as well. But Marcus here having a redemption left on his board, so what kind of items do you think he'll be going for her carousel, seeing that he has a giant spell on tier left?
So he's probably just going for overall strong items, like just utility items, because he's using Warlord to supplement his damage. But he also did something there that I actually really like. He was at 42 gold, and seeing that he had a Katarina pair and an Akali pair, both of which would be a pretty decent upgrade, he chose to roll once and go down to 40, knowing that he'll probably make it to 50 gold next turn anyway. He doesn't really lose any money for rolling here in terms of interest, and he had the extra opportunity to find a Katarina pair or a 2-star Katarina or a Kali, which definitely boosts his power. Now his board is looking absolutely insane. I'm expecting him to see a 9 Warlord level 8 into a level 9 with a roll down for legendaries once again. Maybe we'll see the return of the Yone Chosen. We'll have to wait and see. Yones do tend to like him a lot, so he's definitely on track for a first place finish here.
So at level 9, right, let's just say that you are able to hit your 9 warlords. We actually give up your 9 warlords and sell that Garen in order to hit that power spike of a tier 2 chosen for a legendary.
So that's always a difficult decision, right? Because big synergy took some time to reach, and he does have the Warlord spat, which pretty heavily commits him to Warlord. But at the same time, the power of the legendaries should be strong enough that even if he just has a dead item in the Warlord spat, he should be able to win if he gets like a 2-star Yone, 2-star Kayn, and all that stuff.
Yeah, and I ran this was actually a question that Mortar had at one point. Do you prioritize, or for the community, do you prioritize a synergy being stronger, or do you prioritize legendaries too being stronger? In this very case scenario, I feel like 9 warlords is such a hard thing to get, right? Because you do need a warlord chosen, and then you need a warlord spat as well. Granted, I do think that if you hit a Yone 2 and then you had 3 perfect items for Yone, that would be when I would make the argument that that could potentially be stronger. But
so yeah, you can actually just call the Warlord spat and a triple item for the Yone or Kayn if you do get 9 Warlords. So that would be an argument in favor of keeping it. But because the chosen Warlord is actually a Garen, you're losing a lot of value in terms of your chosen stats. It depends on if you think the Warlord 9 Kayn or Yone is worth it. And I've seen it do a lot of work, but at the same time, I would rather field a team of all legendary units rather than 7 dead units plus Yone 2 with a Warlord spat.
I mean, Marcus is on an 8 win streak with over 50 gold. Like he's miles ahead of his competitors. And also, the Warlord spot that we've been talking about is on a Kalista right now. So there is the option that he could hit that tier 2 legendary without losing his Garen chosen or losing that 9 warlords, as you mentioned, by just slowly leveling up to 9 and then just rolling naturally for a tier 2 rather than forcing that chosen to.
Yeah, I would say the best path to victory he has right now is reaching level 9, and then instead of selling the Garen immediately and killing his econ, I would just slowly roll for either a Kane or a Yone, get something to hold the spatula, and then reevaluate. If you're at a point where your 9 Warlord board is not beating the enemy boards, maybe then you choose to sell the Garen and then roll down for a different chosen legendary if you see you really need the power. Because obviously, selling off your 9 Warlords is a very big power drop, so you have to make sure you are fielding something stronger than that just to make that transition. Although it does look like he will be sitting above level 9 50 gold for an extended period of time if he chooses to from his position right now.
Yeah, and then talking about Warlords a little bit, so what makes this comp great is something that I do want to talk about. So at the moment, Jarvan has the Ionic and then also a Morelos, and then the only other item is actually, so right now he did slam another item, but prior to that, there was only just the Hajj on the Katarina. So 6 Warlords, big power spike, and all your units are good, but is there really one specific unit that you really do want to focus on that is your true carry per se?
So, not really. Warlords is kind of similar to old Cybers, except without the Irelia carry, in the sense that it gives all your units a bunch of stats. Everything can do some form of damage. Because everything is good, everything does something, rather than having dead units for synergy. Although, with the recent patch, the Warlord, or the Xin Zhao buff and the Jarvan buff are definitely helping this comp out a ton right now. That's probably why we're seeing this comp being played a lot more. Although it looks like he's losing his streak here. If he jammed the tier, he actually would have won that fight. Fun fact.
That was longer than I expected. Numano definitely looked like he was winning here, but that Sun Jiao tanked for a very, very long time that I was actually kind of worried for the other side.
Yeah, Xin Zhao has a lot of hidden power in that, like, you don't really see his abilities effect on him, but you can definitely feel it by seeing, like, enemy ashes hit it for 10 damage at a time.
Yep, and then popping over to Chrome here, who is having a much better game than his previous two. He's sitting at 55 HP in third place, and he is running Divine Enlighten. So I'm going to assume that he's just going to be looking for a Warwick for this composition, but we'll see how he goes.
It looks like he's trying to play a mix of Warwick, Morgana, and a bunch of other relevant units, like either Dazzle or Adept here. He does have the Yone, which is definitely helpful, but I did just see a Yone 2 with a Sunfire on someone else's board. So Yone odds are definitely starting to go down already in this game, even though it's stage 4. But yeah, his combo so far looks pretty good. A lot of synergies, right? A lot of boosted power. Stuff like Adept, whether you have 2 or 3, is still relevant because it happens at the beginning of fight and applies all its effect to all enemies. Same with Spirit, right? The attack speed goes on all your units. So, and Mystic, and you get the idea. Like, this kind of thing is pretty good overall for building a strong board rather than just focusing on 1 or 2 synergies. It remains to be seen whether he chooses to go harder down into Divine. Maybe he goes for 4 Divine or even 6. But it does look like he'll probably settle for 4 Divine and just roll down now for maybe a Warwick carry. He does have the QSS. He can find a Morgana, replace something with it. We'll have to wait and see what he does.
Yeah, I'm pretty shocked how strong this comp has been, even without the work in the previous round. Granted, he did hit the Yone, which is a huge power spike, but there has been no items on the Yone yet besides the giant spell, but it was still able, just kind of like a very steady, a lot of different mixtures of synergies just pushing through.
Yeah, so the Divine and the Adept combo is just something that I feel like is a little bit slept on right now. People don't necessarily realize that you don't have to have 6 Divine for Warwick to pop off. You don't have to have 3 Adept or 4 Adept. You can just run 2 Adept and it still does stuff. Overall, I'd say his board was staying alive due to good synergies and also maybe because he dodged some of the scarier matchups. Oh, this is a really big pickup for him here. It's a little unfortunate he's not going to get to field Morgana this game, but this is a not Morgana, Ezreal, but this is definitely a very strong pickup. Shojin Morello placed. Morgana carry can do a lot of work.
Yeah, so I want to actually talk more about this composition you registered. So Enlightened Morgana, obviously really great unit. Morgana has always been really strong with her AoE damage just spreading throughout. And then so just getting her as a tier 2 unit right off the bat is always awesome. But the thing is that now that there's no talent, the Enlightened units aren't buffing anyone too crucial besides the Morgana, right? Like, there's no core carry. So why is it that Enlightened is still good in the meta?
So I wouldn't necessarily say it's good in the meta, but a chosen Morgana gets the bonus stats, which helps her out a lot. The items he has for the Morgana is also very good. He has the Shojin Morello, which is probably just the 2 best items you can have on a Morgana. The Shojin effect, the mana that it gets, is actually buffed by Enlighten. So instead of giving 5 mana per auto, I believe it's giving 8. so you're getting some value out of that as well. Yes, this with a loss of Talon, the comp does go down some in terms of strength, but Talon wasn't actually relying on Enlighten to begin with. Definitely Enlighten was very good for him to help him get his resets, but everybody knows that when they see a Talon reset on a unit, it's going to keep resetting, especially with the targeting change. So the value of Enlighten on Talon actually went down with the Talon change. So I'd say that you can still run Enlighten without Talon for sure. As you can see here, the Morgana is doing massive amounts of damage. Dazzler has a lot of effect. Just overall good sustained damage, MR Shred, utility, just very good to have in any comp.
Yeah, Benva taking a huge hit from Kurumx here. And Kurumx actually does have a few units to pivot into. He has a set on the bench. And then he also did sell the Kindred. So I'm a little surprised on that. I thought that the Kindred might have stayed longer. So he does value the 4 Divine more than the Hunter buff. So what do you think is the priority here? Like 4 Divine obviously very good in meta. But I feel like for a Warwick, having a Hunter buff is just really strong in order to push out extra damage.
So this Warwick doesn't actually have any items on it, and it's a 1-star. There's no AD items for him, so the Hunter buff wouldn't actually do that much to him. It might even cancel his auto attacks, which is something that happens to Warwick a lot. So Warwick with Hunter isn't actually as big a benefit as Hunter is for most of their units. The Hunter proc does have the effect of canceling the auto that he puts out a lot of times. So most Warwick carry comps will actually not even run Hunter just to make sure the Warwick puts out sustained DPS. But as it is right now, he definitely doesn't need Hunter just for a Warwick 1. He's relying on this Morgana to carry his comp, and the Morgana is doing a lot of work. He also has the Yone 1, which is doing a ton of cleanup, but what his comp is lacking right now is a good physical carry. Yone missed. That is unfortunate.
It was a super close one too.
He still wins this in the end because it's a Yone, but yeah, that dodge was some box moments right there. That Lee Sin with a Divine Spat is what everybody is staring at on his stream right now, and I'm sure he is staring at it very intently as well. If he gets that, it is extremely useful for him. Someone even pinged it out, I think.
Yeah, Kurum's on a 4-win streak right now, so this could be his comeback moment with the 1-1-1s that we're talking about. He's in a good spot to do so too.
Yeah. He's getting an item for Warwick here, probably Hodge. M3 picked up another Warlord spat. That probably means he's going to be sticking with the 9 Warlord. He gets to drop the Garen now, actually, if he chooses to. That's a very, very big bonus for him. He's going to be able to find a 5-cost Chosen, slap a Warlord spat on it, and replace the Garen with a Garen 1. That is...
Look, this is a moment where you have to like consider, is it even worth trying to take that from M35? So if this was a game where M35 has already had the 24 points, I would say 100%, right? Because you want to stop him from getting in first place. However, at this point where 2 players are knocked out already, like M35 seems like 5th place is almost guaranteed for him. Do you even try to take that spot away from him, or you just try to guarantee your own spot to be better and stronger?
So there's some some smaller things that go into it, but the gist of it is that no, it's not really worth denying him here because no matter what, he's reaching 24 points from his board's position. He has 50 gold, level 8, with a ton of warlords, and overall, probably it's going to take him 3 games to reach 40 points as well. So there's a clock on this tournament now. Basically, after I'd say 5 games, the tournament's going to end on the 5th game, no matter what. Or not no matter what, but it's looking very likely. So no matter what, if M3 takes 3 games anyway, as long as he doesn't win the next one, it should be fine, even if he wins this one.
Yeah, the only way for Marcus is obviously if he gets first place again. Oh, wait. Hold on.
So this is a very, very good example of what Zed can do for your board. You hit an early Zed2 with an RFC, and you get to go level 9 and find 2 Yone 2s. That is very terrifying this season.
I'm gonna have nightmares of Yone 2s tonight. I feel like every single game there's just so many Yone 2s in front of me.
Yeah. Like you can even consider like at this point obviously you don't sell a Yone 2 for anything, but it's worth noting that he's the double Yone isn't actually as high value as it could have been with old Yone, because what ended up happening was the first Yone would ult, and then the second Yone would see tags on the enemy units and just directly ult them, but it would still have a very high mana bar. But what he has now is with the new Yone, the initial ult isn't actually a big part of the carry itself. It's just the damage dealing portion. And he's putting the one with lower mana in the front so that they both ult at roughly the same time. So he's getting a lot of value out of them.
the massive double destruction there from the two Yones.
Yeah. Although
That's the scary part, for sure.
the double armor and MR shred isn't actually that high value, because if you're reducing something from 90%, or something that's already been reduced by 90%, it's lost a lot of its value, right? Instead of reducing 90% of their initial armor, you're only reducing 9%. But I am a little bit scared because I feel like there could be a potential bug in the system, if you think about it, where what if they did the armor reduction based off the initial
There's
armor?
no bugs in the system. The game is great. I'm kidding. No, I completely get what you're talking about in terms of potentially there.
Yeah,
But
as long as the Yone ult is coded in a way such that it's a debuff and not so much like a flat out armor reduction, it should be fine. And I'm sure they took that into account, so it should be fine.
yeah,
But
and
the two
then
Yone is obviously very terrifying to look at, just overall.
we do want to talk a little bit. So we do actually have someone in chat more talk confirming. But one thing is that Yone 2 is out of the pool. Marcus did go for level 9 now. And so we have to see what other legendary too. He takes mostly the cane. I would say it's the other way, but I guess Kurumx right now, Kurumx takes a giant hit going down to 3 HP because this is scary. Like Treebeard is looking like a top 2 for sure. Marcus actually losing to Bertasaurus here, so I'm curious later on to what Bertasaurus is running. Numano gets taken out at 5th, so he is unable to get the 24 points threshold. So these 4 players, I'm curious. Kurumx and Bertasaurus, I would have said was on the weaker side, but love to see about Bertasaurus. And then Marcus with his 9 warlords. So doing a little scouting, thank you Treebeard for that. I did miss it slightly what Bertasaurus was running.
Bert was running a
for Divine, I believe. Yeah,
yeah.
300 for Divine. So I'm surprised that beat the 9 Warlords composition, but we'll see here. Treebeard right now against Marcus, 9 Warlords player. I don't think I saw a chosen legendary on his end. He is running a Lilia though at the back line.
The Warlord, the primary issue I'd say with Warlords is that it lacks a good AD carry. So what ends up happening late game is that you just have a bunch of AoE magic damage. So if anything lives past that, then it becomes basically impossible to function. Now M3 does have a Jhin, which does fix that problem a little bit. But overall, the Zeds plus the double Yone 2 is probably too much for him to deal with. And not being able to find his own Yone 2 to throw on the Warlord spat is definitely hurting him as well. Because Kayn does not do nearly as well into ninjas, as the Zed and Evelyn are just going to jump past, and the Kayn's like very far away from them. And it also gets DPS down as it's walking towards the Zed.
Bertasaurus does have a King 2 and a Lee Sin 2, so maybe the Lee Sin 2 can get a proper kick, but it's really hard to position, especially when you have 2 Yone 2s here on the front line and the back line. So offer all your opponents, it's just really scary no matter where you put your units. So going against Bertasaurus here, the Lee Sin is on the right side, but does get Sephard, and then... Yep.
What I do find curious is, does the QSS prevent the Yone debuff? Because if it's counts as a debuff, maybe QSS can actually remove it. That would be pretty cool.
I believe it should, but I'm not 100% on that one. But yeah, QSS by its name should be able to counter the Adept debuff.
Yeah, we're just seeing the power of what Zed can do for your comp. Zed 2 just straight up rockets you to level 9 with 50 gold. With an RFC, of course. So starting the bow, getting the RFC, and an early Zed is a very easy way of getting you a ton of power. He's picking up a Runons here, making his Zed even more powerful. Very scary stuff.
Both Kurumx and Bertasaurus does get knocked down, so it is against M35S here, who also hit Azir too. So we'll see. I don't know if anything's enough for this Yone 2.
So Azir 2 is actually a massive swing for this comp, because as it is, he doesn't have a QSS. So this Zed can very easily be CC chained by an Azir. I would actually consider buying the Zed and moving the items from Zed onto Yone. I think that might actually be worth it, and I think he's considering it as well. But at the end of the day, it is still a Zed with 4 ninja buff. The RFC Runons is going to do a ton of work for him. Not sure if you're willing to lose these 3 items on a very high AD unit.
I also do love the itemization I just noticed on MD5S board, where the Jhin has a Assassin, Warlords, and a Vanguard on it. So just really a synergy booster in the backline. But it's not enough. These Yones got free-for-alls and just went left, right, and destroyed the entire board. Treebeard taking the win on the 3rd game.
Yeah, still a very strong showing from M35S, though, for sure. 1-1-2 in the tournament. Definitely very top-tier scores.
Yeah, so definitely unfortunate that Numano was unable to get second place here, but Marcus here does perform really well, having a total of 28 points, I believe, going first, and second. So extremely impressive points from his end. And we'll have to see. So right now, he is only 12 points away from the second threshold, but he can still win off the next game as long as he gets first place. Everyone else is very close behind. Numano here only needing 4 points for the total, but obviously he wants to stop Marcus. Treebeard needing 5 points, Spencer with 10 points, and Bertasaurus also with 10 points. So Spencer and Bertasaurus are the players that we kind of want to check on as well, because they're going to be gunning for their first place. So one, to deny MD5S from winning, and two, so that they can hit that 24 points threshold. Other players, on the other hand, level 9 Kurumx and Benva, they're not out of the race yet. Obviously, they are a little bit behind the other competitors, but again, if they are able to deny that first place multiple times, they can still win the competition.
Yeah, so what's interesting to see here is M3, if he top fours 2 more games, he actually makes it to the 40-point cutoff. And so the only other ways beat him now is if they make 24 points on the next game and then win the next one. So if I were M35S here, I would actually be considering just playing top 4 both games and hoping that someone else doesn't win, since that's a much more consistent way than playing first or eighth and playing for the first. But with how he's been playing, maybe he just says, screw it, I'm the top dog in this tournament. I'm going to play for the first. I'm going to get it anyway. I'm just going to win the tournament right then and there. We'll have to wait and see.
Yeah, we'll definitely he has both of those options, like you mentioned, going for the safer play, top 4 for both. And honestly, top 4 for both means that there's a good chance you could go for first. Or if he is in kind of a tougher spot, there's nothing wrong for M35S here to just go, you know what, first or eighth. I am at the 24 points threshold right now. Why not go for the first and try to take home the victory? So is there any other players that you're kind of looking out for besides M35S here?
Yeah, like you said, the people at 14 points, I believe it was Spencer and who else was it? It was Bert. They need a first place to bring it home and reach the, well, not bring it home, but they'll reach the 24-point cutoff. And so it'll be interesting to see how they play. I think it's in their best interest to play first or eighth for sure. They need to make sure to win this one because the game is very likely ending after the 5th game, or the tournament's ending after the 5th game. So I'll be curious to see what comps they go for. Maybe they'll hard force the Zed and hope to be in a position similar to Treebeard in this past game.
Yeah, we'll be hopping into game 4 very shortly, but I am curious to see if another situation occur where, let's just say MD5S has 8 warlords. There's a warlord spat on the carousel. This time, though, would players actually go for the spatula or not is the question. In the previous game, that was where MD5S still cannot take home the victory, so you definitely just want to play your strongest sport and not go for a random warlord spat. But in this case scenario, maybe you do take it now. What are your thoughts on that?
I think if we see another warlord spat and he's at 8 warlords, we're gonna see 7 instant blue pings on the warlord spat. I'm pretty sure we'll be seeing that one come up. But yeah, everyone should know by now, if M35S wins this next game, the tournament's over. They can't really do much more from there. So
there might be 7 angry pings, but no one wants to be the one to take the fall, though, right? At the same time, where it's just like, I don't want the spat, though. You should do it. So
yeah.
We'll have to see what happens in this game. So start out with Treebeard, who did extremely great in the last game. Treebeard right now is at 17 points, so he only needs a 3rd place in order to get the 24 points threshold. But again, the timer is on now for all the players, since Marcus does have a yes next to a name holding 30 points. So most of these players here are keeping an eye out on their own scores to figure out what they need to get to 24 points, but they also need to keep an eye out on Marcus to make sure that if they have to be gunning for that first place or not.
Yeah, I'll be excited to see whether Spencer sticks with his ideology of, hey, me play Zed, me take bows, or if he tries for a different first or eighth comp, although none others really come to mind. Maybe if he gets a good cultist opening, he could try to make it to level 9 and roll down for all the legendaries. Treebeard here getting a really great opening. Seeing a 3-cost cultist drop out of an orb is probably the best opening I can usually hope for. But then again, I am a very cultist favored player. Every time I see that Callista, I just feel good about the game.
The worst feeling, though, is when you can't find your 3rd cultist, or sometimes even if you hit like a cultist elite, but then 2nd, 3rd, 4th round, there's still not even a single TF or pike to be seen. That would be the worst feeling, because honestly, if you have cultists early on, especially when you hit this Callista super early, you're like, all right, I'm gonna run through cultists, Callista throw some items on her with that bow, and just have her carry me. But if you're unable to find that 3rd cultist, it's just a question of like, what could I have pivoted to, or should I have?
That's definitely been something that's happened to me before, where you're either stuck at 2 cultists with a cultist chosen, which obviously feels very bad, or you're stuck at 5 cultists and you're like, hey, maybe if I roll one more time, Mortdog will give me that missing cultist that I need, and then you end up rolling 20 gold and you still have 5 cultists and your board hasn't changed at all and you just feel sad. It's
There's
definitely
no
happened.
button from Mortdog to give you stuff. It's always the other way around.
Yeah. If anybody's seen that Twitter post
Yes.
of the photo of him sitting in the room with all these buttons of don't give him this item, Mortdog carousel him. Yeah, that's basically what's going on.
Can confirm, actually. He has casted for us in the back. We have seen it happen behind the scenes on production sets.
Yeah.
So let's see. He does hit at least 2, but again, we are now on 2-1 now, and this is when it starts feeling bad, right? You're on 2-1, and there's still no dirt cultists, and you're going to PvP rounds.
So what's interesting here is he actually has not found a chosen yet, so he is guaranteed a chosen on the next turn. And it remains to be seen whether that chosen is a chosen Zed or a chosen cultist of some kind. Obviously, the nuts for him right now would probably be, I'd like to say, chosen cultist Pike. If he gets one of those, he's probably in the running for top 2, maybe even first. I want to see whether he chooses to jam the Zizurot here or save the bow. It looks like he's choosing to save the bow. He's definitely leaning towards a Zed angle here. Personally, I probably would have jammed Zizurot, although because his board isn't actually that strong, it's okay to not jam an item right here and wait to see if you get a stronger board, since jamming an item might not even win you the round with such a weak board.
Yeah, Zizurot is overall just a really good tanky item, so I feel like a lot of players might get a little bit tricked per se, because Guinsoo is a good, or not the best, but it is a good aggressive item that you might want to just slam on the Kalista as well. So I think a lot of players haven't really thought of the fact that putting it on the front line, just having the Zizurot could give you a huge power spike, because it's almost like a whole other unit on the board.
Exactly, and a little bit more about the chosen he just saw, the Moonlight Aphelios with the Lysandra in his shop. He has the option of going for a Hunter Aphelios game, which I've definitely seen happen recently. I've seen Aphelios 4 actually do okay, and he had the Ginsu as well, but we'll wait and see what he chooses to do there.
I would love to see that. It's been a while.
Yeah.
But hopping over here with Spencer against Bertasaurus. Bertasaurus has a really scary board, honestly. Really tanky board, to be fair, actually. Not so much aggressive, but overall, it just seems unkillable.
Yeah, this is a really, really tanky board. Is that 4 brawlers? Is that
I believe so. That's 4 brawlers.
Yeah, either way, it's like a very tanky front line. He has the Thieves Gloves, and it happened to roll a damage item for his Garen, which actually helped out a lot. Spencer here fielding a standard Warlord Keeper opening. That's an opening you see very often, either Warlord Keeper, Warlord Vanguards, Warlord Sharpshooter, some mix of that. The units are all 1-star except for the Nidalee, but it looks like he chose to pass his first chosen, whichever it was. Maybe it was just something that didn't fit. Maybe it was a chosen Assassin Diana. Who knows? Yeah,
and then one thing is that we have seen a lot more popular in this current meta is playing Keepers. So can you expand that a little bit? I feel like Keeper was always a little underwhelming in the early patches of Set 4, but obviously now there's been changes. So why is Keeper more popular now?
So Keeper, I'd say Keeper has actually pretty much always been popular. I feel like the synergy just gives a ton of value early game when pretty much everything is going to take the damage and the units can live for a lot longer. Later on in the game, sometimes it'll just burst through the Keeper shield with the damage from like either a Yone or a Kayn or whatever. But early game, the shield is max value, similar to Locket. It's a flat number, so as the game goes on, the number doesn't scale very well. With 4 Keeper, they extended the time of the shield, so you get a little bit more value out of that. But yeah, any synergy with a flat number usually does better early game than late, as is shown by old Electric, if anybody remembers. The old times.
The old times, Katie. How old are you? The old times, back in my day. But yeah, so one thing that we did see here as well is that the Keeper buff, along with the Warlord, was actually really tanky for Spencer. In general, when you just first glance at the board, it seems kind of weak. But with all the health buff added on, that Nidalee survived for a very long time, pushing out almost a ton of damage, able to clear off the enemy's board completely.
Yeah, just a small or what's the word for it? Tangent here. Treebeard did pick up a bow Akali, which gives him a RFC Akali. We might see another Akali 3 game from him, maybe. We'll have to wait and see what items he has aside from that. Wow, a Jhin and a Shen Irelia. That is very scary. Early game, Adept doesn't actually have as much value as late game, since the primary purpose of Adept is to slow down the mana gain of the scary big ultimates like Azir, even Ahri, Yone, that kind of thing. So Adept early game doesn't have as much value. I don't really expect to see him pick it up, but this Jin definitely warrants some thinking about here. If he's willing to lose the money for it, the Jin is a pretty big damage bonus over Vayne. Although Vayne is giving Dusk right now.
But Dusk right now, is it really that valuable in comparison to a epic unit with sharpshooters on stage 2-5?
I think the main reason he's choosing not to take it right now is because he wants to make 20 gold next turn. And if you take this Jin, you're selling off the Katarina here to make 10 gold. And then even if you sell the Vi, you're probably not making it to 20 gold next turn. You would be, if you win this turn, you would be 11. And the next turn, you would get 7 gold for 18. You could sell Vi for 20, but you'd have to win this turn. And it's not guaranteed to win this turn with a near full 1-star board. So he's choosing not to take the risk. He does pick up the Shen Irelia here. Oh, I didn't even see he had an extra unit on the board. Okay, so he probably could have made 20 gold if he tried here, even if he didn't win.
To be fair, we did see the combination of Irelia right next to the Shen, and I feel like that is just a pairing that is too good.
Oh, actually no, I did do the math right. Okay, so if this Vayne was a Jin here, he would be at I believe 13 gold here, and he'd have to sell everything for 20. So he probably would have or it'd be 14 gold. So he barely makes it because he won and got the win streak money. But taking the Jin there and losing is definitely a very big hit on his econ. So this is definitely the safer play in terms of money. And it's unlikely he goes into a full sharpshooter build anyway, with the meta the way it is right now. I thought that sharpshooters would be fairly strong this patch, but they haven't really shown up to as much as I thought they would.
Yeah, sharpshooters right now has just not been doing too well, since it seems to demolish that backline pretty easily. And then in terms of the front line, frontline wise, there's just a lot of depth compositions like Yone 2 and such, so I feel like that just slows down sharpshooters, and maybe that's why they haven't shined so much in the late game. But then again, I haven't really seen anyone test it out fully. They tend to like just pivot out of it.
Yeah, so an interesting combo here that Spencer can think about is the Teemo Yumi, which gives a Spirit and opens up Mystic. So something slept on early game is Mystics. The only person I've really seen take advantage of Yumi's strong early game is Aegon. If anybody has ever seen Aegon play, oftentimes he'll just open until 3-2, or he'll be extremely weak and save as much money as he can until 3-2, and he'll roll down and he'll buy Kindreds and most notably Yumis and Jannas. And the Yumis that he buys actually keeps his units alive for much, much longer than you would expect. It's definitely a very slept-on unit here, and he already has a Shen to pair with it if he wants a Mystic and a good front line. But it looks like he's just going to settle for a Chosen Mage here. He doesn't want to be too behind. He wants to make sure that he has a Chosen going into stage 3 so he doesn't take infinite damage here.
So here's a question. I mean, obviously a tier 2 Chosen is decent, but I feel like a Chosen Lulu is just not that big of a power spike. He did see that he had an Annie in the shop, so he says, okay, at least I have the 3 mages. Is this really that significant of a power spike? It's a power spike for sure compared to his old board, but I still don't know if I agree of how strong it is, because he was getting Warlord buffs and victories throughout for a couple of rounds.
Yeah, so losing the Warlord buff definitely hurts, especially since his primary damage is this Nidalee 2 with her spears. But the other buffs on the Warlord were to a Garen 1 with no with 2 Vanguard, and a Jarvan with no Keeper and no other synergy. So you weren't actually getting that much value out of the Warlords to begin with. But by that same logic, I don't really think I would have picked up the Chosen Lulu here, just because, like you said, it doesn't give that much value to you, and it doesn't do too much for you. And you'll also notice here he has a Shen, so he could have gone ninjas, but he chose not to take the Zed in his shop because he has no bows. And I think this is a decent path to take, considering knowing what we know about his point system. He needs to first or 8th this game, and playing Zed with no bows is more an 8th than a first.
Yep, and then hopping over to MD5S's board. So this is a player that is the only one who is able to win the whole tournament if he gets the first. He's sitting at 4th place with 86 HP. One thing we have seen from MD5S throughout all 3 games was that he was extremely strong early towards mid-game, and he was the type to always fast 9 and to try to look for legendaries and chosen legendaries, who he is at, hitting 2 different Yone 2s, not in the 3rd game though, but he was able to hit a 0-2s, Lilith 2s, etc. Seems like he's not having as strong of a lead. I just jinxed him there from 4th place now to 8th place. I think that someone else is going to take a hit here to be around the same point, but 74 HP now. What do you think of MD5's state of board right now? He's running 3 mages and 2 enlightened.
So he has the chosen Nami, which used to be terror, especially with the Ludens. With the recent mana change, it's not as scary, but oh wow, okay. I paused there because I was worried that he was actually gonna sell two-star Vanguards before in line. But yeah, with the new Nami, it takes so long for her to actually get the ultimate off that even chosen with the mana reduction, the Ludens isn't proccing as often as it used to, so he lacks a bit of damage with this build. What's interesting to me is that he actually is holding a lot of Enlighten units, and he built a Lulu too, which I guess if it was offered to him instantly, you would take. But this time he doesn't have the Cultist to provide the frontline damage and the physical damage. So he's lacking an AD carry early game, and because early game there's a lot of auto attacks, his board is not as strong as it could be. Although right here the Nami is shown doing a ton of work with the Ludens and the Hodge. The healing helped a lot here, keeping it alive.
Yeah, Marcus is definitely shown to be the most flexible in terms of the early mid game, just playing the strongest board that I can think of. But due to that, it's also very hard to see what he might potentially pivot to. And again, that just depends on what he rolls into later on. I am confused by, as you mentioned, all these Enlightened units that he's holding. Granted, they're not enough to deny him Econ, because I believe it's 2 Janus and 2 Fiora, so that's a total of 6 gold. But even then, holding that many units is kind of questionable of like, oh, why is that? Or what is it going to be used for later on?
Yeah, well, early game, if you get a chosen Nami and you have a Ludens, you still take it. It's still a good unit. It will get you to level 7, but I would expect him to probably sell it off and level 7 start rolling for a little bit more. Although, if you consider in the scope of the tournament, if he gets a first place, he can win. Maybe he can sit on this and try and make it to level 8 and roll down an 8. And if he happens to RNG his way into like a Kane and a Yone, he can pull out a first from econing to 9 from that position. That'd be pretty interesting to see if he makes that decision.
Yeah, we'll have to see, because with this format, I feel like every single time there's a tournament, there's pressure in different stages of the game. And in this current format, obviously the pressure is really there once you hit the 24 points. So we have seen players choke before, for lack of better words, where once they hit that mark, they're like, there's just so much pressure to aim for that first place that they end up doing more poorly and might rush into decisions that they normally wouldn't do.
Yeah, I think M35S has shown that he has been doing very well in the past few games. Even, oh wow, that's very unfortunate positioning there. Kindred instantly gets one shot. But yeah, I think he's shown that playing the way he normally does has been able to net some firsts, and like 2 firsts and a second, which is amazing results. So I'd expect him to just continue playing the way he is and just be confident in how you're playing. Since every tournament has their own like mini meta here, oh wow, he's choosing not to sell these for gold. Okay. Since every tournament has its own meta built inside of it that isn't necessarily the same as ladder, if you happen to have a playstyle that works for you in the tournament, you should continue playing it, regardless of what you may know from ladder play.
Yeah, and then I want to talk a little bit about last round, since you were surprised by this as well. He didn't sell any of his units for gold, and he didn't pick up any of, like, there was an Ashe in shop. Granted, there's not really amazing items for the Ashe to pivot into, but still, I would argue that might be potentially better than the Fiora or the Janna pairs.
So I was just surprised at not selling the Fiora Janna. I didn't really expect him to pick up Ashe because, again, his items are like very utility-esque. If he doesn't run legendaries with these kind of items, he's probably not going to end up winning. But yeah, not selling the Janna and Fiora might just be because he wants a level 7 that doesn't involve these two 2-star Vanguards. So he wants to field a board without rolling. And if you want to hit some stuff without rolling, you have to hold on to pairs. And 4 in line, of course, is also a very big boost to this Nami. All of his damage is on this Nami. 3 mage is purely for this Nami. The other 2, like, somewhat use it. Like, it's good on Lulu. It's not, it's good on Lulu, but it's useless for the TF because it's a TF1. And the Enlighten buff would also be purely for this Nami. While he hits some Morgana as well. That's very nice.
Yeah, and definitely good to see that Nami is still sufficient in the early to mid games. We talked about it briefly in the start. Obviously, Nami took a pretty big hit in terms of nerf, so you don't really see any reroll Namis anymore towards the late game. But in an example like this one, Nami is still very viable for the early to mid game, and it's still a good carry. And for what it's worth, she is a 1-cost chosen, so having her to at least to the 6th then, I think is still very good for the meta.
Yeah, I would expect him to not roll at 7 here and just purely play for first. He did manage to win the next 3 rounds after the bad loss there. I would like to see him jam a Shojin here and play purely for legendaries. I want to see if he takes the leap here. I would expect him to sell for 50 here. Either Shojin or Yeah, I think with these items, you're only looking to gem Shojin.
If you gem
There's not
Shojin
really
here, are
much.
you really just looking for the Yone to slam later on, or are these items sufficient for a Kane as well?
So Shojin isn't that amazing of an item right now. There's not many good users. All the main legendaries right now have lower mana, but the Shojin does give him a ton of power early on right now. He's running 4 Enlighten. The Shojin gets value off the Enlighten. It's on a chosen Nami, and I believe the mana threshold means that he'll be cutting off at least 1, if not 2. He ends up choosing the Giant Slayer, which is a more like secure item for late game. Obviously, Shojin isn't great later on. I would have gemmed. I think if you're playing for first, this is acceptable. Shojin isn't that good an item later on is the main reason why. Like it's probably not going to do as much good as a Giant Slayer. Although Giant Slayer right now isn't that useful either.
Yeah, we'll have to see how much of a hit he takes within stage 4, because I do feel like Dinami was super good in stage 3 and 2, but definitely gonna fall off now. He hits the Enlighten Janna too, but I still don't know if it's gonna be enough, because he's still running a lot of 1-cost units, and his only one remaining is just that Morgana, but Morgana right now, no items, tier 1. It
So
does damage, but...
what's worth noting is that he actually chose to lose Econ to buy the Ashe. With the Giant Slayer Slam, I think he's planning to play Ashe this game. He didn't plan on it before, but with the BF Sword and Bow Drop, I think he's leaving it as a viable option here. His items are now looking not that bad for Ashe, right? He has the Giant Slayer and the Hodge, 2 decent items for Ashe. If you pick up a defensive item or maybe another Hodge, it'll be pretty good. We'll have to wait and see how he does this transition, though, whether he waits until 5-1 or if he chooses to just pull the trigger at 4-5. I would expect him to wait. I mean, if you're playing for first, you're going to need all the money you can get. Hopefully he doesn't take too much damage while waiting here. His board, Nami 2 is not enough to stabilize at stage 4 anymore, so it's definitely worth considering picking up some other stuff.
Yeah, this is the fear, because I do know that MD5S love fast 9ing to, or yeah, just fast 9ing in general and look for those legendaries, and especially with the way he slammed those items. You were thinking potentially like Kane or Yone, but obviously he's taking too much of his, so he needs to grab the Ashe. So question is that when is he going to give up his econ to level and roll down, or vice versa? I mean, at this point, he's going to at least push for 8 before selling the Nami and rolling.
Yeah, the Nami 2 is still stronger than anything you could field here. You can consider taking the Nami and the TF out for Ashe and Irelia. I don't even think that's much stronger. You do get an Ashe with 2 items, but it's without Hunter. It's in a lobby with a lot of like Zed players and all that, so it'll just get blown up. At least the Nami is able to CC and provide some utility so that you can maybe kill off a couple extra units. Overall, it's looking a little rough here that he chose to level instead of sell and roll down. I expected him to roll, but again, this is a 1st or 8th play. If he gets the 1st place here, he's able to close it out. If he gets that Kane, he's also able to probably close it out. That is a beyond insane unit for him right now. It's absolutely scary. But
we'll see if he gets it, but I highly doubt that players just give him that free Kane.
Yeah. That's a Kane with a rod, and he has a Ludens and a Hodge. That's probably not working out.
So this is a tough part right now. So as you mentioned, like it's kind of more of a 1st or 8 kind of feel for MD5S right now. But at the same time, he is taking so much damage before he gets to that level 8 and the Nami roll down, or at least selling the Nami before rolling down, that I'm just concerned that we have seen a lot of players, right, today especially, where they go down to 30, 20 HP and they go for this 1st or 8th place, and it does give them a certain type of reward where they do end up top 4 for their risky play and they push for it. But just because they took so much damage initially, it's really hard to get 1st place when you tank so much damage in stage 4.
Yeah, we see him roll down at 4-5 here. He got a little spooked by all the damage he took. I'm surprised he didn't take the Akali for now. I think the Akali would have been an upgrade. He does have a Ludens, Hodge, Giant Slayer. It's like usable. Oh, you definitely do take that Ari though. That Ari will do work. He's trying to decide what to take. Oh, so close.
He might be... there we go. Okay.
Yeah, he's just using this temporarily right now because he doesn't have anything else. Ideally, it's not an Ari carry game. Ari is not amazing this meta right now with so many backline access. Everything has a lot of HP. Divines can stay alive. But yeah, this is the danger of pivoting at 4-5. You actually don't have enough money to do anything. So in this scenario, when he didn't actually have that much money, if you remember, he had 40 gold on 3-5 after Carousel. That's actually not enough money to go fast 8 and roll down for something relevant. So here we're just, wow, okay, that's pretty good. We're sitting here praying for some relevant chosen. So far, he still hasn't gone one.
Oh,
wow.
Okay. That's really good. Yone, Warwick, Leeson, and then the Morgana chosen. So this is probably better than he could have expected.
This looks like one of those just hit moments, you know, where you roll down at 8. You only have he had 20 gold, and he was able to hit a Yone, a Kane, a Chosen Morgana, and 20 gold. That is a extremely good hit for him. It might not be enough to keep him alive. This Morgana doesn't have Morello. It's not as strong as the other one, but it's definitely still an upgrade for his board for sure.
I feel like at this point, though, unless MD5S is able to get a Yone 2, I don't really see him getting first place at any point, just because of the fact that even now, he's still losing to 1109. Like, other players have reached their power spike, and then we're waiting until 5-1, which is usually a turn where a lot of the players tend to roll down, or to get their second power spike at least. So, I mean, he has a decent board now, don't get me wrong, but I don't know if it's strong enough to push him into the top.
Yeah, I would agree. I think at this point, you just play for top 4. I think if you top 4 this game somehow, and then you top 4 the next one, you still make 40 points. You just have to hope that nobody who breaks 24 points here wins the next game. I would say playing for 40 point out is much more consistent. And that's also why I was surprised that he didn't roll down at 4-1. You don't necessarily have to play for first from how high of a point score he has.
Yeah, and then look at some of the players real quick. Like Numano at the very top there, he only needs 4 points in order to get the 24 points. So I would say that most likely in this game he's able to get it. And then doing a quick other roll down here, I don't know if he can get that other Yone or not.
I would say this Ash 2 is even bigger upgrade. Like, I would rather have the Ash 2 here than the Yone 2. Yes,
okay.
Yone 2 is nice, but it only has 1 item on it right now. The Yone 1 is already very good. It's not like you need a Yone 2 to have Yone power, right? Like, Yone is still very relevant at 1 star, but Ash 1 just dies so fast that it doesn't even do anything. And it's also obviously a lot less damage than Ash 2 since the ability scales pretty heavily.
Right, unfortunately he was unable to hit either of them. He's going against Kurumx right now with 22 HP, also down the bottom. Kurumx here running a mini Cultist, and able to take down MD5S. Again, MD5S is still missing a lot of his core carries.
Yeah, getting 8th place here is definitely very rough if he does end up 8th. It hurts his score a lot. He's not able to reach 40 points on the next in the next game. It's actually a very big deal. But
if MD5S goes last place here, he basically puts himself into the same position as everyone else again, where now next game, everyone's going to be very close to either already hitting that 24 points or... Ooh, okay. So, Treebeard with the Z3. So yeah, we'll have to see about this game. Like, Treebeard, another contender who has 17 points. He only needs 7 points in order to get the 24 points threshold, hits the Yone.
Everybody is just hitting everything.
Everyone's hitting, yeah.
He has a Chosen Z as well. It does not have QSS, notably, so it can get CC locked, which is a very big deal for Zed, especially, as you can see right here. It's getting locked by a Lilia. The other person has Mage Zillion, which is definitely a big bonus. But it is a Z3 at the end of the day. It will probably be able to take down whatever comp you put in front of it. Treebeard's board just looks very strong. If he had the QSS, it'd be...
MD5S does get knocked out. So this is a huge relief for all the other players. Now they don't have to constantly scout his board, don't have to be pressured in losing this entire tournament, because it's guaranteed now that this game will not end the tournament because MD5S is out. So now there's a lot of these other players now gunning for that 24 points. Numano is there. Bertasaurus needs the first as well, along with Spencer. Treebeard needing only 7 points. So we have 1, 2, 3, 4, about 4 to 5 other players in this lobby right now who is able to catch up to Marcus and go for that first place win.
What's also noteworthy is that because he ended up 8th here, and I did touch on this earlier, but what ends up happening is that the next game he has to win or else he can't reach the 40 points. And if he wins, obviously he would still win through the 24 point and win condition. So it does remove one of his win conditions for the next game, which is unfortunate. Right here, Treebeard Z is just absolutely shredding through anything you can put in front of it. While I did say Ginsu is not a core item, it is still a very good item. It does have the bow on it. Any form of attack speed is good for Zed. The attack speed buff does increase the amount that Ginsu actually gives to it, because Ginsu is % attack speed, and that does scale up with Zed, I believe. I think that's the case. It does scale up base attack speed, yeah.
Yeah, so we'll have to see here where Treebeard goes for. What item do you think is best in this carousel?
Zeke's for sure. I mean, I don't think a Zeke's will reach his pick. Someone will probably take that sooner or later, but by far Zeke's is the best option for him here. Any form of attack speed again is very good for the Zed. If he doesn't get that, then probably pick up a redemption, get some healing for his team. If he gets a good redemption off, it could actually swing a fight pretty heavily, since most of his units don't have regen.
Yeah, so we'll have to see here. So one thing to note is that Benva is down at 4 HP with Kurumx. So Benva and Kurumx are struggling a bit just because they had a rough first and second game. So they really do want to try to squeeze into the top 4 in this one in order to try to contend with others. Just because of the fact that after this round, there's going to be multiple people who's going to have the 24 points mark.
Yeah, so right now it's looking like Bert is far and away strongest in the game just based off of HP. He's been win streaking, he's been at 57 for a while. We'll have to see if the Z3 is able to take care of him. But it does look like from the preliminary scouting that there are a lot of backline carries this game that do not have protection items. And what I mean by that is the Zed will be able to just kill everything if it gets close to it. Now this Zed unfortunately did not get to aggro on the Jhin, and this is more due to positioning, but it can definitely turn around and just kill the Jhin pretty quickly. There's no GAs on the backline. I saw Zillion 2 as well exposed in the backline, ripe for Zed to just stab.
Said, yeah, just went through every single person one by one. Numano took a pretty chunky hit there, and Bertasaurus is actually still in the lead on a win streak, so this is a really good spot for him right now. And Spencer, level 9, everyone's doing really close up, so Benva does get taken out, unfortunately, but Kurumx hanging in there, almost in the top 4 again, along with level 9 Spencer, all potentially getting knocked out on this round.
Yeah, so Numano chose to roll down here, which is I guess he was probably a low gold anyway, so he wasn't able to go for 9. Bert's definitely going for 9. He's at 40 gold. He's sitting pretty. Got a pretty strong board. Numano's items do look a little bit rough. Hodge isn't necessarily the best for Jhin. He scales pretty well off AD, not just the damage increase. I would have liked to see maybe these items on the Kayn, although I'm pretty sure Numano found the Jhin before he found the Kayn. Otherwise, he would have put Hodge QSS on it. The chosen cultist Jhin does provide a little bit of utility with the CC from the cultist, but ultimately it's not actually that strong of a carry. Although with the Jhin buffs, it will help a ton into the Riven. I was just about to say, Jhin into Riven is a very good matchup for Jhin. It always has been. Even back in set 3, the Jhin was able to punch through Riven because the instant burst damage is not able to be shielded through.
All 3 players getting knocked out on that round. Spencer, level 9 Kurumx managed to squeeze into top 4, as I mentioned before. So really good for him if he's able to stop others from getting that first place. He can definitely still come back. And then Numano, as you mentioned here, one thing is that I do love seeing the animation for it, both love and hate, is the Jhin, where you see it poking at a enemy and you're just like, can you crit, do some work, and then out of nowhere just one shot, because for what we saw, that Riven was tanking for a very long time, and then finally the Jhin crit went through and just one shot the Riven, and when that moment happens, it is really satisfying.
Yeah, Jhin is definitely one of the more satisfying units to watch when he does land that 4th shot. So it looks like Numano is actually playing for top 4, which is very understandable here. He rolled down, which showed that he just wants to make sure that he's in the top 3 in terms of HP. And with his scoring, as long as he gets anything above a 5th, I believe, he makes it into the 24 cutoff. So now he's also joined M3 in terms of who is above 24, as well as Treebeard, I believe, also makes 24 off this game.
Treebeard is guaranteed. So Bertasaurus is the only one that truly matters in this lobby. So Numano and Treebeard both get 24 points. Obviously, they want to deny Bertasaurus now, because if Bertasaurus goes first in this lobby, then he joins the 3 other players. So that means half the lobby is capable of taking the victory home. So they want to avoid that. They want to limit the amount of chances of how many other players can win and narrow down to 3 instead of 4.
There's actually an interesting mechanic that was used in the 4v4 tourney, the Mordog 4v4 tourney in the past, that I don't know if we'll see here because there's no comms between the players. But what's interesting here is if Numano knows that he's about to fight Treebeard, he can intentionally make his board weaker just to make sure to not knock out Treebeard if he's already winning that fight.
That one is not allowed in this tournament.
So that one is not allowed. Okay.
Yeah, so in the 4v4 tournament, that makes a lot more sense with the team play. But yeah, so Numano over Treebeard right now. Jhin doing work on the backline onto the Shen, unfortunately. So just taking his time. before it can push out any damage. And meanwhile, Treebeard's board just demolishes. So with the Jin, how much can the Jin clean up? He does get Pike stun with the Frozen Heart. Takes a really massive damage here, down to 18 HP. Bertasaurus also as well. I don't know which ghost he was facing, but he also took a L. So there is a chance that Bertasaurus is able to get that first place.
So what is actually interesting there is, yes, he lost the fight, but if you saw what the Yone did, it actually two-shot the Z3. It ulted it twice and the Z just died. So he does have a hope with this board. If he's able to somehow get the Yone onto the Z right away, he can definitely win that matchup. But the Z was alive a little bit too long.
Yone was able to one-shot, but then the issue was that the Jin just wasn't killing anyone. The 4 shots just didn't go through, it missed. And so once again now, Numano against the other opponent, against Bertasaurus, doing a little scouting to see how his opponent is with Treebeard. And the Jin in a really great spot, one-shots at work really quickly. And now onto the left side of the map, still doing a little scouting.
Yeah, I would be amazed if Zed beat the Warwick here. This Warwick with the Runons is actually able to clean up most of the fight. So it does look like Treebeard is knocked out there. But with the way he was positioning with the backline Warwick, it actually made it so that this Jin had pretty free reign on the fight. Jin was able to just permanently DPS. And with the blue buff Yone, the Yone was obviously able to do a ton of work for him as well.
So that was interesting ping of... I'm curious to see why the pings were going out here. Morello's on the Yone would be decent, but other than that...
It's probably because Bert needed the Morello for something on his board, and right now, everybody's interest is to make sure Bert does not get first place, because if he does, then he qualifies for the 24 points.
Very good point. So right now, Numano's doing a little bit of a roll. Not much to search for besides just that Yone. Unfortunately, couldn't find any. Ooh. And then Bertasaurus here does hit the set 2. So
the set 2 and the Azir 2. That is a very tough board to deal with.
That's a big power spike. So Numano did win the previous fights by quite a good amount, honestly. So we'll see if these 2 legendaries upgrade is enough to win.
I would say it pretty much definitely is. I think at this point in the game, as long as this Yone doesn't completely take over the fight, although we could be wrong. I mean, it is a Yone with a Vanguard spat. Yone 1 versus set 2 Azir 2. Who's to say which is stronger? It looks like set 2 Azir 2 is stronger.
That wasn't enough.
It was close. I thought that would be it too. That looked like a lot of damage. Fun fact, stage 6 damage nerf saved his life. That was 2 damage.
There we go. The new patch has protected Numano, but even then, I don't think it's going to protect him in this next round, just because, as you mentioned, all those legendary upgrades are really massive, and unfortunately for Numano, I mean, granted, he only had about like 10-ish gold to roll with. He was unable to hit that Yone too, and
so,
yeah.
Yeah, something to note here is the Kayn on the enemy team actually rolled much worse items this time. Giantslayer Sunfire versus the old Shojin Hodge, which gave him 30 starting mana. So this is actually a much bigger difference. And
the positioning.
If he positions Yone correctly here, it's actually very possible that he just flat out wins the fight. Because Yone with these items is pretty equivalent to a 2-star legendary that deals a ton of damage on its own. Oh,
the thing is Numano actually positioned the Jin really well. Both times, the Kayn was unable to kill off Numano, but even then, 2 mana legendaries in the board to watch out for, and we have Bertasaurus taking home the victory. So these scores now is actually pretty scary. I believe we have 4 players now confirmed that is able to get first place. So very unlucky for Marcus there. He did get 8th place and puts him at 29 points. So no matter what, he's been doing really well. Just because he got that 8th, he is unable to win unless he goes first place. So what are some things that surprised you during this game, Kiting?
I was surprised at how effective the Warwick was actually with double Runons. I would have expected it to die a lot faster, but it looks like Bert was able to protect the Warwick for long enough for it to pop off with the Divine and with just Deathblade stacks stacking up. I was also surprised at seeing what was it? The Z3 getting 3rd place. I thought it would place higher, but then again, Warwick does soft counter the Z, so it is expected for him to get knocked out there, especially if he doesn't have QSS.
Funny thing that you mentioned this, because I believe that we saw a Z3 go 3rd place all the games, if I'm not wrong. At least 3 of them I know for sure that Z3 has gotten 3rd. But looking at the scores real quick, MD5S still staying in the time with 29 points, but due to that first place, a player like Numano, who was right behind him multiple times going second, and second is now very close with 28 points. follow him right behind, and we have Treebeard and Bertasaurus as well. And other than that, all the other 3 players, if they are able to steal first place, they can still win the tournament because it would put them at the 24 points mark and denying the other 4 players from winning. So what are you thinking of the scores right now when you see such close scores going forward?
I mean, the next 2 games is gonna matter a lot. Hopefully, one of the current bottom 4 players wins the next game, so we get to see 2 more games. But it'll just be up to any of them to perform. It just depends on if any one of them can clutch it out at the very end and get.
And then we'll see mathematically, but even for a player like Benva, if he went first, for Benva, it would go into the legendary 7 games, which statistically should be like less than 1%. But there might be a math right now, depending on how other players do. Like, for example, players like Numano or MD5S will have to go 7th or 8th in order to balance that out a bit. But we'll see here. The next 2 games are definitely to be watched. We'll be hopping into a 5-minute break, and then we'll see. Half the lobby now is currently able to win. Will it happen, or will we have some of the underdogs take home the victory instead? So we see you guys in 5 minutes for game 5. Welcome back. We are now going on to game 5 of the Challenger series. So really exciting now that we're really narrowing down to players, and there's a lot more chances now for the tournament to end. 4 out of the 8 players are at least at 24 points and above, and the other 4 players can still win. So Kiting, out of these 8 players that are here tonight, who are you rooting for? Are you rooting for an underdog, or are you rooting for someone who's been performing really well throughout this tournament so far?
I'd say I'm rooting for M35S just because personally I know the feeling of doing really well at the beginning and then accidentally tanking one game and bring it back really close. So I'd like to see him pull through and bring it home.
I agree. I actually had the exact same scores as M25S in one of my tournaments where I went 1-1-1-8 and it ended up being second place in the tournament. And that was because there was a other contender such as Numano who was very close behind going 2-2-2 on 3 of the games. And I believe his 4th game, he got 4 points on it. So still like better than the 8th score. So it all balances out where he's only 1 point away. So even then though, we still have other players like Spencer, 1109, or Kurumx who are in their teens for points wise, but if they are able to steal the first place and then go another first, they can still win. So definitely scarier and harder for those type of players, but then again, it's still possible for them. And last but not least, I also do want to talk about the 8th place player currently, Benva. Points wise, he is super behind everyone else, but there is a miracle for him to go 1-1-1 in order to beat out his entire competition. So he has to deny everyone else. And again, we have to see everyone else's score. Granted, someone like MD5S, who has done really well, if he gets second, he'll have the 40 points before we even reach the 7th game. But it is possible. It's slow, but even a player like Benva, if he can get first place all around, and with the correct ordering of players, he can still take home the victory.
Yeah, for sure. It'll just take a little bit of luck. Right here we see I actually really like the belt start. I used to do belt start all the time, even when everybody else was starting BF sword. So I feel like it's a start that's not repped well enough. If you don't get the double belt opening, it's one of the best openings for sure.
But isn't it too scary that if you do get another belt though, that is kind of one of the most disastrous start?
Yeah, but even if you get the other belt, you can still combine it into like ZZ Rot mixed with Sunfire. Like there's still options out there, but if you, it's not as bad as like double cloak, for example. It looks like he's going to be doing a Moonlight reroll here. Maybe he's picking up the double Lysandra shop instead of Elise for potential cultist.
I mean, he does have a really early start for it, but unless I see 2 more Lysandras and 1 Diana in my next shop, I don't know if I'm going to be able to commit to it. I mean, we have saw the power of Lysandra from early to mid-game, and even all the way to end of stage 4. Numano in game 1 was able to secure a huge win streak all the way to that with 92 HP, but I don't know if it'll be suffice in terms of the late game when you have all these Yone 2s, Kane 2s against you.
Yeah, the new Yone definitely does a lot of work into the Diana reroll comp because Diana usually just stacks defenses and tries to stay alive into everything with Gunblade plus its Bramble Declaw, but Yone can just knock all that defenses right off and just kill it right away. So it definitely is a little bit weaker with the new Yone, but it's still a viable comp, and we'll have to see if 1109 is willing to go for it.
Yeah, and another thing about him is that he does need to steal the first. So he is one of the 3 players that we mentioned before that will not be able to win the tournament even if they get first. But what it does allow them to do is to guarantee them the 24 points threshold and to delay the tournament away from the other 4 people that are qualified.
So he does choose not to go for the reroll here. He did get the double belt in a tier. It's not a great opening. And
we jinxed it.
Yeah, he does have a cultist opening at least. He can maybe field 3 cultists and a Lysandra. It doesn't look that bad. Throw in a Diana level 1. Or you can do this as well, get an assassin buff. The items are a little bit rough right now, admittedly. Yep, he does choose to go with the cultist opener.
Yeah, so here it was slightly debatable, but I still agree that having 3 cultists on 2-1 is still really strong, and especially having an extra tier 2 unit would beat over the Moonlight synergy.
Yeah, for sure. I'm a little surprised at the Warmog's gem. I would normally save the double belts for some other items if your 3rd item doesn't combine well with it, which in this case it doesn't. You can make stuff like Sunfire, ZZ Rot, all really good for early game, while Warmogs is more of like a, I kind of wish I didn't have this item. I'd rather be any other item in the game kind of item. But
The
yeah,
thing
he
with
does choose to.
Warmogs is that we have seen in the past where players have slammed it, and it does save them a significant amount of health. Just because Warmog, yeah, like very quickly, I would say even like towards the end of stage 3 and early stage 4, the Warmog's kind of just like, what's the point of you, right? But
Yeah.
in the very early stages, those extra health is really hard for players to go through, and so you are able to rack out potentially an early win streak, and that can save you a lot of gold for better rerolls later on.
That's true, and it is very good on Elise. Elise scales pretty heavily off of HP as well with her transform, but it is interesting that he was willing to jam it on a 1-cost unit, or a 1-star unit rather, because even if it's keeping it alive, it's not keeping it alive for that much longer. 1-star unit is pretty weak in general, very low base HP. It helps a lot here. It adds some frontline, and hopefully with the Galio, he is trying to push for a win streak here, save some HP.
But unfortunately, the TMO and it's just too strong having your brawler frontline, a Tom Kench as well, that is tier 2, and then you have the TMO Vayne in the backline just pushing out so much damage.
Yeah, usually with this kind of board, you're not actually expecting to win since they're all 1-star cultists anyway. So I would have hesitated on making that Warmogs for sure. What is interesting that he can do here is he can choose to pre-level. Now, personally, I would choose not to pre-level, and this is actually a stronger board if he does choose to go with this. Okay, so he doesn't. The Silas too, the Silas with Moonlight is really slept on because Silas getting into 3-star is such high value. The unit is really, really strong at 3-star. It provides a ton of frontline. And you could just pick up any item for it, Ionic, Sunfire, anything like that, and it would do a ton of work.
Yeah, I think the scary part about that unit is just the fact that you have to spend a lot of gold on him. And granted, like you mentioned, he is really strong and probably slept on more than people should be. But the issue is just that he just spends so much gold on him, and then you have to sell him eventually because you do want to pivot into something better. And so it's just scary to commit to him so early on.
Yeah, well, you don't have to play for Silas 4. Like if you have Moonlight with the Moonlight chosen Lysandra, you could just buy a Silas 2, and that'll turn into a Silas 3. The Silas 3 by itself is usually enough to get you to level 9 even. I've definitely seen I've seen a couple people like Stocks and Grand Vice use it with Sunfire, Ionic, and Ludens and random strong early game items, and it just lasts forever. It kills everything. It's tanky, it doesn't die, and it does a ton of damage and has utility as well. It's just overall a very strong unit with high base magic resist as well.
Yeah, completely fair. So we'll have to see if later on he decides to pick up some, if he does see multiple in his shop. But I think at the moment he is pretty committed into his cultist pathing. But one thing to note is that we do have Bertasaurus and MD5S at 100 HP at the very top there. And then Treebeard and Numano is taking quite a bit of a hit in these early rounds, being on 7th, 8th. Granted, it's still very early, but it is unique to see that out of our 4 players, 2 are at the very top and 2 are at the very bottom at the moment.
So I believe I could actually give some reasoning for that. I think they're all trying to play for the first, right? They need that first place to make sure that they win. And so what they're doing is they're either playing extremely strong boards to try to go to level 9 as fast as possible, or they're open forting for perfect items for a specific build. So it'll be interesting to see how those 2 different playstyles work with each other.
Yeah, we'll hop into their POVs in a little bit, but as of right now, we are on Spencer's board, where he's running 2 Dusk and 2 Sharpshooters, so your classic 2 Bangers in front tanking, and then some Sharpshooters in the back doing damage, and also finding a Zed pretty early in the game, but again, just slamming items on him that I don't think he's going to commit.
Yeah, it'll be interesting. It's probably not a Zed board, given the GA, right? It's not very popular Zed item. It's definitely just an item holder, but he does have a very strong board for sure. Tom Kench, while he's tanky, he doesn't actually do that much in terms of damage. So this looks like
the mist though.
That's actually very scary. We're going into overtime. This Tom Kench can waddle over and 3-shot the Nidalee if it crits, but it did not crit. So he does break Bert's streak there, which is a good thing for everybody else in the lobby. M3-5S also lost his streak. So there will be no random 100 HP at stage 5 win streaker this game.
Tom Kench is actually one of my favorite units in the game because I feel like he does exactly what a good 1-cost should in a normal setting, where late game, he's completely useless, right? Like, you never really see any Tom Kenches being held. But in the early game, when you hit a Tom Kench 2 super early, he is such a massive, strong tank for your board. And I would say he's very highly valued. And also, there is the fun part of him where he has the fortune synergy on him. So you could run that as well in the early towards mid game in order to rack up some RNG or some losses and get some really good items or units from it.
Yeah, for sure. Tahm Kench is probably one of the better one costs in terms of power level as well too, not just design.
But watching this fight here, Spencer against Benva, Spencer here doing really well, extremely strong, 30 gold, and going into a 3-win streak, and Benva will take the loss here.
Yeah. Spencer having this win streak is definitely really good for him. It makes sure, as long as you have 2 gold win streak going into creeps, usually you're okay. You really don't want to have that no gold win streak at 0 or 1 wins or loss. Having the 2 or 3 wins makes you just a little bit richer. Oftentimes it pushes you into a threshold that you didn't really know you needed to reach. Right here, he will almost definitely lose money to pick up that Riven. We'll have to wait and see. That's his Dusk and his Keeper. That's a perfect level 6. You can't really think of a better unit than that. Right here, we have Numano's board. He actually chose not to pick up his first Chosen, which is interesting. It looks like he's going for a more 1st or 8th playstyle here, where he's trying to save as much money as possible.
But this is scary. 62 HP on Crux.
Yeah, for sure. This is definitely very concerning. If he got the double spatula there, it would have been very, very useful for sure. He probably made, so there was a Wukong 2 on his bench there. He probably tried to make his board slightly weaker just to make sure he would keep his loose streak for the money. But that's also a very scary thing to do at the same time. There is an elite in his shop. I would assume he would take this over.
As you mentioned with Numano, he probably is going for the 1st 8 strategy, just going for that loose streak, getting as much money as he can, and then just going for that huge power spike later on. But the issue with this is that if it's 1st or 8th, if you go 8th, you don't really have any control afterwards in your other 3 contenders who might get 1st. Like, in your other strategies where you're just kind of going for the top 4, you can still try to do certain strategies, taking certain items away from that opponent that needs the 1st place, but you can't do that if you just lose really hard out and go for 8th place.
Yeah, for sure. He's in the exact same position that M35S was in the last game, except there's more people at 24 HP now, or 20, not HP, 24 points now.
Yes.
So he's probably considering the fact that there's at least 50% chance that someone who already has 24 points wins this game. So he's probably just throwing it all on hope you hit this game.
Yep, and then the Treebeard, who was at the exact same spot as he is as well, both down at 68, 62 HP. And we also saw a lot of players went for level 6, and I assume that most of them are rolling. So we'll have to see that who have hit their Chosens and who has the strongest board after this roll now.
Yeah, so what's interesting about rolling at level 6 is that it almost always locks off level 9 from you. So if you don't have a strong enough board to go level 9, that's understandable. You can roll at 6 and still have enough money to reach level 8. But he wasn't able to pick up a Chosen, which is definitely going to hurt his HP here. I'd almost definitely expect him to see him keep rolling for at least any kind of Chosen that's functional. It's pretty alarming to see a board with no Chosen at stage 3 nowadays, when everyone has something strong that's able to deal a ton of damage. Yeah, at least he has the Cultist and the Janna 2, which is keeping his units alive for a lot longer than they normally would.
Right, but against Spencer here, which is really unfortunate for Numano to go against, just because Spencer is probably one of the strongest in the lobby right now, if not the first one, or definitely at least the top 2. And so going against Spencer here, who already has quite the win streak, and Kurumx as well, who also has a win streak. So funny thing is that we do see 2 of those players down at the bottom who needs to win in order to just take home the victory. We have MD5S and Bertasaurus at the very top, who are the other 2. And then we have Kurumx and Spencer here, who are players that don't have the 24 points yet, but these are the players that could deny the other 4 and potentially win by just going 1st and 1st.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, one of them, they can even get 3rd. Like, for example, Kurumx can get 2nd. And then if Spencer gets 1st, Spencer doesn't win the game. And if Kurumx wins the next one, he can use Spencer's victory against him and actually win the tournament that way, which is pretty cool. This format does lead to a lot of options here for how to play it out, the point system, but that pike missing was very unfortunate for this team. It
was.
If it went to the left of the Fiora, it would probably have killed 3 extra units at least. But
that's probably one of the worst feelings, when you just see your unit kind of miss the entirety of the enemy team.
Yeah, it does look like right now that there's a lot of people trying to play for Ashe. What's very scary is that Numano is not rich and he is 44 HP. So I'm very surprised that he didn't choose to keep on rolling there. But I guess if you are playing for the 1st place, you do have to just suck it up and hope that you hit exactly what you need. Cloak is probably his pick here, even though he doesn't really want to take the Cloak. He's
The
probably going
scary
for
part though about going for that loss streak. As you mentioned, it was kind of more of a first or eighth kind of play, but even then, he wasn't really econing a like extra compared to his other opponents, just because so many of them were going for a 3 to 4 win streak at least, and so their gold amount were about the same. But the only difference is that Numano has 50 less HP than the rest of them.
Yeah, not just that, but you'll notice that he spent a lot of gold, but what did he actually upgrade on his board? He only
Right.
pretty much bought a Janna 2, and that was it. And you can tell from how he's been playing that he is trying to go for the Divine carry. He has the BF sword and the spat for Divine Spat, and he did tunnel for the Runons there. He was also, on during his roll down, holding on to... He lost money to hold on to the Irelias plus a Jax. He did end up selling the Jax later on, and the Lux as well for Econ, but he is definitely going for some form of Divine comp here at level 7. He's probably going to use the Nico to clean up whatever 2-star, most likely Warwick. But,
I mean,
we'll
he
see
did
if it's
hit the
enough.
Irelia 2, which is a decent power upgrade for him, and then he does have the Shen as well on the bench. So there's options for him, but it is a little scary because he did spend a lot of gold in this round and not as rewarded as he wished he would be.
Yeah, another thing is that his comp right now just absolutely lacks damage. There's nothing that's going to kill the Elderwoods here. Like, he probably kills at most 1 unit. He did manage to kill one, the Maokai. He might even get the Nunu here if the Pike doesn't ult away.
I don't think so, yeah.
Nope. Yeah, it's just going to ult away. Lulu ults. Elderwoods are able to stay alive forever in this matchup. And because he is just low damage, he's a low damage comp, he's taking a ton of damage. That would have been very, very nice to see maybe 3 turns ago. But... he probably has to run this for 1 turn.
Right, but here's the thing is that even then it just maybe save him a couple more health, but it's still questionable whether or not he can win, just because M35S and Kurumx both looking very scary at the top there with 96 HP. So if Numano takes a hit here, I feel like it's almost guaranteed that he can't go first, just because you're down in your 20s HP now before you even hit stage 4.
Yeah, he is also against Kurumx, who has a very strong board. He does have the Kindred 2. The Kindred 2 is going to do a ton of work here, but it all depends on where this Galio spawns. If it spawns and hits the Kindred and the TF, it's all over. Luckily, it missed. It did miss. The Morello does tag, but it shouldn't do too much damage here. The Annie is able to tank the Kindred up, however, because it's an Annie 2 with Mage, so it does look like an L here for him. Selling this Janna would probably be the right idea here, because if he does not hit the perfect board, he is going 8th place really, really quickly.
I think he wants to keep the Janna for Mystics, potentially.
So, yes, but at this point in the game, if you do not hit a perfect level 7 board, you will die. He's choosing to run this with a Shen. He'll probably bench something else for the Shen as well, and then sell them off. He's trying to get rid of the Pike, Elise, and Jarvan, and he's trying to put in Warwick plus 2 Lux, Morgana, and then a Divine unit at level 7. That's his ideal board. You can keep the Kindred 2 in that scenario. The Kindred Chosen Spirit is actually pretty useful there with the attack speed. It'll be pretty useful overall.
Right, it is definitely a really scary spot for him. So after he levels here, he's going to have about 40 gold to level. Oh, thank God, he does find the Warwick at least. So small little stabilization, but... I
would drop the Pike 2 for the Elise here. You definitely want to keep the Keeper. You have to keep rolling here. If you take 1 hit, you're just out of the game.
But the question is that it's kind of hard to find some tier 2 epic units, especially now that they've changed the chosen mechanics. So all in all, this is kind of one of your strongest board that you could have gone for. And considering this is actually decently lucky for him as well.
Yeah, getting a Warwick right away, getting a Kindred Chosen, all very useful. The issue is, I'm surprised he didn't roll down for at least a Warwick too. Right now, his board is still considered very, very weak. The only relevant unit on it is the Kindred, and potentially the Pike. Bert, however, is going for level 8, and so he is not rolling at all. And so a rolled board will pretty much always overpower a non-rolled board.
Right, that was a good matchup for Numano, but he's still in a really dangerous spot just because of the fact that right now, slowly rolling to 8, leveling to 8 doesn't seem like an option, so you have to just get a strong board there. Okay, maybe it's an option now because that worked too. Should be able to stabilize him.
Yeah, he should. He's probably also going to sell the Pike for Ashe here, or swap it out for Jarvan, which is an upgrade. I would probably swap it for an Ashe, and I would play for first from this position, since he needs to get this QSS no matter what. He's sprinting for a glove on the next carousel, so his bow is a dead item, so you could at least throw it on Ashe.
There's
He's
definitely a chance for
debating
him,
whether
but there's
flip it.
still players out there that are decently strong. I mean, right now Numano's definitely like top as the strongest, just hitting that Warwick 2 earlier on. But he is at 24 HP, which is a really scary spot for him. So going against Spencer here, who is running the sharpshooter still, with the Vanguards tanking up in their front line, the Warwick just going in now though, and it's just able to just demolish though.
Yeah, Warwick 2 at this point in the game is still extremely, extremely strong. Stabilizing at 24 HP is not ideal, but it's still doable, right? Like it's still functional. Maybe he can make something work with it.
Yep, Treebeard taking our hit. So we've been talking a lot about Numano, but just another player to talk about who seems to be in a pretty similar spot, if not worse. Unless so Treebeard here is running Zed and does have the chosen Zed.
He's almost at Z3. He's missing 3 items, and he's gonna sell the Aatrox once he gets a cloak off Carousel for QSS here. So it's not actually looking all that bad. But he does need to get the QSS as soon as possible, along with ninjas. He is missing that Shen. And with the new rolling odds at 7, if you don't hit that Shen, you are extremely, extremely weak. Or not extremely weak, but the ninja buff is that the 4 ninja buff is a very big deal for the comp overall.
So both players do have an out. Numano hitting that Warwick 2, stabilizing him. And then we have Treebeard against the 1109.
1109 is level 8 at 4-3, which is very, very rare to see. It's a poor interval, and usually it means you're going to be a lot poorer and you're not going to be able to finish your build. It looks like he hit a Jin 2 and then a chosen Jin, but he doesn't really have the items to work with that. I'm surprised he's not jamming items right now, as he's like pretty much 1 life away from death. But there is a Shen with a tier. I would like to see Treebeard take that, probably.
Most likely going for it. 1109 though, will he take that away? Nope, he goes for
Actually, no.
Ethan.
I would like to. I'd like to revise that. Yeah, the Quicksilver. Just because I took a look at his points, he is at 26 points. He needs the 1st or 8th. If he is able to get this game, this QSS, and then hit the Shen naturally, he might actually be able to pull back from this low HP into a 1st.
Well, Shen have been the safer play though. Granted, you did mention there was kind of more 1st or 8th to go for the item over the unit, but having the Shen here is a big power upgrade due to the fact that you'll assemble all 4 of your ninjas.
Yeah, it is definitely a power upgrade, but right now, wow, rewarded. So right now, he doesn't care at all about doing the safe play. He needs to make sure he can win the game, and winning the game is the most important part here for sure. He does get the Zeeks, the QSS is just overall looking very good for him. I would have liked to see him roll down for Z3 right now, because I think 25 HP is about as low as you can go safely in stage 4 while still having a shot at 1st place. I believe Numano had 24 when he hit, and he still got 3rd because he lost occasional fights, even though he hit Z3 very quickly. He did high roll the matchup here, however, Spencer's board looks very, very weak. All 1-star units and a Garen 2 is not going to get you very far.
Yeah, one thing I do want to point out here, so Treebeard here getting a really decent power spike, and he's very close to the Z3, so we'll have to see if he's able to get it after his roll down. And I want to say Kurumx once again, from Challenge Series 1 to now, he has been in a spot where he needs to stop a bunch of players from getting 1st place. So last time it was very unfortunate where Kurumx did get 2nd place, so Spencer was able to take home the win. And this time, unlike just having one other opponent, Kurumx has 4 players to stop, but Kurum's been on this win streak for a very, very long time. So he does have a excessive gold lead. So we'll have to see. I mean, we have a lot of players coming back. There we go. He did it. He hit it, guys.
I very much so like this roll down. Again, like I said, 25 is about the HP limit that you can have while still playing for 1st place. And now that he hits, he gets the AFK all the way until level 9. He just gets to take a break.
He is at 25 HP though, and we do have players like Kurumx, who is very high up there on a win streak as well, which we haven't seen Kurumx for in a while, so I'm curious. But then again, Treebeard here hitting that Z3, hitting his 4 ninjas, so
yeah. If he has the option of rolling at 8 if he chooses to, if he wants to try and find a Kane. However, given his gold, he'll be leveling on 4 or 5 after Carousel, and even then, he probably doesn't have any money to roll with. So at that point, I think you just put in either a Mystic or an Adept and call it a day and try and go 9 off that. His HP is actually not that bad. Someone did break Kurum's streak, and most people are actually in the 20-something range, with 2 notable outliers being Kurum and M3 5S, who, if he does win this game, wins the tournament.
Yeah, I'm super curious to see how this will pan out. 1109 already taken out. He was one of those players that did not have the 24 points, but could have reached it, and if he was able to stop anyone else from getting first. And then Numano, I don't know what happened to. Oh well, I do know what happened to him. He had the Warwick too, and so we'll have to see how he fares off now that he gets an insane gold lead here. And then Treebeard getting a double tier, so slamming that right onto their Akali, which is really great for him.
Yep, pretty straightforward. It's debatable whether it's good on better on Akali or Pike there, actually, funnily enough, because the Akali doesn't actually have any other damage items aside from his Zeke's, but the earlier stun out of Pike could actually change the fight very, very heavily, while a buffed up Akali 2, while it's very nice, is not actually super fight changing. There are some fights that are won purely off of Pike stun. But yes, given that it's a blue buff, it most likely is better on Akali just for the slightly higher damage output.
Yeah, and then hopping over to MD5S, playing a comp that I haven't seen in a very long time, and I do kind of miss 6 Elderwood and Hunter. So he's been doing decently well. We'll have to see how he fares in the meta. He is holding a lot of items on Annie right now, which I do expect to be sold sooner in the future. Ash still staying alive with 1 HP, just pushing out with the Last Whisper and the Giant Slayer. And I believe it should be enough to clear off the board, and Kurumx taking another hit on his second loss streak.
Yeah, Elderwood Spatula set is extremely, extremely good. Elderwood Spat on any legendary really is really high value. What M3 is doing here is he's playing for first. He chose not to roll there just because he didn't really have a pair to roll for. But now that he has the Ash pair, he can consider rolling down. He does have the Chosen Hunter. Ooh, that's a really big pickup. Probably goes over the Annie, maybe. If he's willing to lose mages, we'll have to wait and see. But because he has the paired Ash, he's much more willing to roll down now just to make sure he hits the Ash. And then once he does hit the Ash, he's able to go 9. But before he actually can't yet.
Yeah, and unfortunately didn't really hit any upgrades for this round. He does have the K now, though, so potentially switch off, like you mentioned, on the Annie if he's able to. Honestly, I do think the trade-off might be worth it. I don't know how much I value the Mage buff right now with this current board, but then again, you don't have your Ash 2 yet, so you might just want to keep them in for a little bit longer.
Yeah, for sure. Mage buff isn't actually that useful with the units that he has on right now, but it does look like he's trying to drop 6 Elderwood in favor of some better units. He's probably going to throw in Kayn and Warwick and drop the Vigar, Annie, and all that. Maybe once he finds another unit, maybe the Yuumi might be useful. You can also consider running 5 Hunter here, Warwick, Aphelios. It's a pretty big damage boost. You can drop Maokai, Vigar, and Lulu for 3 Hunter units, or 2 Hunter units plus a Kayn. But looks like he's going to keep the 6 Elderwood for now.
Yep, he's coming to it. Unfortunately, still not hitting the Ash, but he does put the Gunblade onto the set, and then the rest of the items I'm surprised that he's actually not putting any of the items that he had onto the Kayn. So I'm curious to see if that Kayn is just another holder until a better legendary comes along, such as Yone.
So right now, because the set has the Elderwood spat, it's much more likely to live longer. So he probably put the Gunblade on that just to make use of the healing on a high resisting unit, because healing is always more effective on anything with high MR or armor. But the Z3 is just going to absolutely destroy that comp. Treebeard has been winning ever since he hit that Z3. He's on track for a win here.
That was such a fast round as well.
Yeah.
So we do see Numano taking a hit, so he's down to 17 HP, and then, so this lobby here is pretty tricky, right? We have Chrome and Spencer, one being on a huge win streak, and Chrome, who has a massive goal lead, but he's just been taking hits after hit, so maybe that's because he's trying to fast night. I'm not too quite certain on his situation, but those 2 players are here to deny the lead, versus the other 3 players, Treebeard, MG5S, and Numano, all who are capable of winning tonight's tournament if they go first on this game.
Yeah, I'm interested to see if Kurum is able to put together that legendary comp at the very end. He just hit level 9 here with most likely 40 to 50 gold. If I had to venture a guess, he's been win streaking pretty heavily, and because he's been lose streaking pretty heavily, it implies that he didn't roll at all at level 8. And I want to see if he's able to put together a comp that's able to overpower the Z3, the perfect item Z3 that Treebeard has. This time, it's very different from last time. This time, it's a perfect item one. So the QSS is pretty much able to counter all the counterplays that you can put in for Zed, whether it be Azir, Adept, or anything along those lines.
We have seen players like Treebeard or 1109 who had the perfect item Zed that still didn't get first place with it. But then again, that was when a player was able to go fast 9, had a bunch of legendaries 2-star to compete with it. In this lobby, we saw earlier on 3-2, a lot of players who leveled to 6 and they rolled it down. So it's going to be very tough for any players to go to 9 for that strategy. And Kurumx taking another massive hit. Spencer taking a hit as well. So without Kurumx and Spencer, it's guaranteed that one of these players will just win and the tournament will be over by this game. But Kurumx rolling it down here. We have the perfect view set, Azir 2, Lee Sin 2. We just talked about the fact that if there are anyone that is able to defeat a Z3, it is a bunch of legendaries 2-starred, and Kurumx did have the most massive lead out of anyone, so it's good to see that he has gotten to this point. He should probably Nico the Kayn.
So what he's doing here is he's actually just waiting to see which he should Nico between Set, Riven, and Kayn. This is the 1st or 8th play. Or not 1st or 8th in this scenario, I guess 1st or 5th. But him doing this is definitely playing for the strongest possible board at the end. Since with this HP, he's probably not dying in one turn anyway at this HP or at this level or at this stage. And so he's willing to take a loss here just to make sure he gets the exact 2-star units that he wants.
It was never very scary and close. Numano does
Treebeard
get taken out as well. And Treebeard did lose a fight. Yeah, so I believe the only person that survived a fight was M35S there. And I don't remember the other one. I'm going to assume it's Spencer, but I could be wrong on that. But we'll have to see how this goes now. 2 of these players are able to win, and Spencer and Chrome is trying to take the crown away from them, or at least delay it by another round.
Yeah, I'm very surprised to see he chose to put Ludens and Ionic not on the Kayn. I would have slammed that onto the Kayn right away. I think that he's 100% hitting Kayn here, Kayn 2 here. So having a triple damage item Kayn 2, especially a red Kayn already transformed, would have been a very big damage boost for him.
Yep, so as you mentioned, hits the Kayn 2.
He's going to keep rolling probably for the Set and the Lilia. Anything else that he can throw in? Shen. Oh, he's considering stopping here. Wow.
I'm going to assume that he's just going to Nico the Set at this point. I mean, he's at 4 HP. He hits the Lilia.
Now he's definitely Nicoing
he should Nico the Set, yeah. And there we have it. So we have, ladies and gentlemen, I believe 5 legendaries that are 2-starred.
Yeah, it is just a little bit unfortunate to see that the damage items are not on this red Kayn 2. It would have been very nice on it. Ionic Spark, because everything Kayn hits gets the Ionic Spark applied to it. It's pretty good on Lee Sin, but then again, Lee Sin, yeah, he gets taken down by a similar legendary comp. This one actually has Yone. I think he is dead here. Should be.
Yeah, Kurumx has really great units, but unfortunately, as you mentioned, the itemization just wasn't there versus Spencer's Kayn, who had the GA, but also 2 other damage items that was able to destroy the composition. So all that's left is Treebeard, M35S. So M35S won another round. So yeah.
M35S actually naturaled this set too. You can see because he has 50 gold. He probably rolled only a little bit for it, if anything at all. He's gonna probably try to dodge the Yone and the Kayn here, just move the Ashe around since it has no defensive items, but it does have the 6 Elderwood, which is helpful. I'd like to see him move the Ashe all the way out of the way. Yeah, that's pretty good. He managed to dodge most of it. The Elderwood spat set with 3 items is definitely putting in mad work tier 2 as well with the 6 Elderwood buff on it. He's probably going to get destroyed by the Kayn Yone, though. Yone is a very hard counter to 6 Elderwood. Shreds 90% of armor MR. It's not going to be able to do much.
So the question is, Treebeard does live and kills off Spencer, who just killed MD5. So, okay, we are now
the tournament is 100% over, yes. It's just a matter of which one wins.
Exactly. So we have the set 3 player, and then we also have MD5. So MD5 did lose to Spencer's board, but Treebeard was able to take him out. And I believe in previous round, MD5 did have a lead over Treebeard, but position does have a lot to do with it. If the Ashe immediately gets taken out or not, and depending on the location of the Zed. So MD5 does push to level 9 now, just to put in an extra hunter buff.
So this was actually the correct move. If he doesn't sell that off, he's not able to afford the level up and just barely squeeze in an extra unit. The Vigar 2 wasn't actually doing that much for him, especially into a Zed. It's not going to do too much. But the 5 Hunter might actually change the matchup, since if it procs Hunter onto the Zed through pure RNG, it might be able to take it down. But it does look like the Zed is shaded one too many times. Let's see if the Set is able to clean up. This will be close if anything. Nope.
Oh, if it was grabbing the Zed instead.
Oh,
wait,
the Set with the comeback at the very end. to clutch it
Z3
out.
gets taken down even in the final game. And there we have it, ladies and gentlemen. M35S coming in strong from the very start, going first, and then going in second place. So, and then he had a little rough start with an 8th, but came back again one more time, saying Z3 with perfect items. No, here's my set with Elderwood, and was able to take up but just a little bit in that 0.1 second there. So, Kai, how do you feel so far about everything?
Honestly, just an incredible performance out of M35. I mean, he won 3 games and got second place on another one. And I think we can excuse the 8th place if you placed that well.
Yeah, that doesn't exist.
Sure. Yeah, that one we just don't talk about. He probably chose to play 1st or 8th and just got more dogged, But yeah, all around, a very amazing performance. It was really impressive to see how he managed to go to level 9 every single game. It's not very consistent that you can reach level 9. He showed that with one of his games, but the other 4 games, just very well played.
Yeah, so we'll get him here very shortly for an interview. So one thing with MD5S is that he was in Qualifier 1 previously. Unfortunately, didn't get top 4 and didn't automatically qualify into the second one. But this resolves it very quickly after Qualifier 1. He got his first place in the Championship Series. So all the reward is him to take. He gets a full $200, and he also gets direct invitation to the 5K tournament for the Face Qualifier 2. So I'm excited to see how he'll respond about his placement today, because multiple games he plays so well. Like you see here, first, second. Didn't happen first. Against players who also, I do want to congratulate 2 of the other players. It was a very close lobby, like 5 points difference, and then there's only 7 points difference. Like Numano went second. So overall, really great performance for everyone, but MD5S definitely stood out from the rest. Is there anything about his playstyle you wanted to comment on, Kiting?
I think being able to jam strong items early game and push for the level 9, be in a position so that you can carry your board to level 9 without rolling too much is definitely a very strong playstyle right now. It's one that I know Sox and Grandvice prefer playing, and it's one that I try to emulate as well. So I think he did very well with that playstyle today.
Yeah, so we are going to have M35S here in the call with us very shortly. And I'm just so excited again. To be fair, I'm actually glad that he won just because of his outstanding early performance. And he is here in call with us. So MD5S, congratulations for winning the Challenger Series. How do you feel about being the first confirmed player for Qualifier 2?
Feels a little weird. Wasn't really expecting it.
Okay, what were you expecting?
Well, on ladder, I've been doing pretty bad, so I just played to have fun, and I ended up winning. Wasn't really expecting much.
Yeah, nice job, man. How much did you PayPal Mortdog for those Yones?
No.
When he actually had to think about it, like, how much did I? But so I know you mentioned you just kind of had fun with it and you were surprised that you won. So was there anything that you felt like you were doing kind of special in this tournament that are different from ladder? Because you said that ladder you've been suffering slightly more on. So do you feel like there was a difference between your ladder playstyle versus your tournament playstyle?
Not really. I forced rod every game, the same I do with ladder, and it went different. I'm not sure why.
Oh, okay. So why is it that you forced rod instead of bow?
A lot of people are starting bow right now just to one trick Zed. I'm assuming that you didn't really choose to force Zed this tournament, right?
Yeah, just for the options.
Awesome. Yeah, thank you so much. I mean, congratulations once again. You are going to Face Qualifier 2. I hope you do really well there. I know you're in Face Qualifier 1, so lots of back-to-back tournament for you, and I wish you the best. MD5S, do you have any final shout-outs that you want to say?
No.
All right, thank you so much. Well, be sure to check him out. We'll include his link as well. You can search him up as he has been streaming the tournament. And then I hope you have a lovely time. And then Kiting, any final words that you would like to say as well?
Not too much. Just a fun tournament to watch. Had a good time casting. Hope everybody had a nice time today.
All right, thank you guys. So that was a challenge series. MD5S is our confirmed player. We will be back here in 2 weeks for the second winner of the challenge series, and then we'll have our confirmed players all for the Face Qualifier 2. Kiting, thank you so much for joining me today. We will be back in 2 weeks. So have a great night, everyone.